The Addams family's vintage hearse wound along the mountain road, its tires crunching pleasantly through damp, fallen leaves. Morticia sat in the passenger seat, elegantly trimming the thorns from a black rose, while Gomez hummed a Spanish tune and sipped red wine, casting the occasional admiring glance at his daughter across from him. Wednesday stared expressionless out the window, fingers tapping on her knee as if calculating the perfect interval for a murder plot. Her black braids hung neatly over her shoulders. Her pale face looked particularly somber in the dim interior. "So Wednesday," Morticia said, voice like silk wrapped around a blade, "do you really think putting piranhas in the pool was a mistake?" "Of course not," Wednesday replied coolly, eyes still fixed on the withered trees rushing by. "I only regret not starving them for 3 days first." Gomez exploded into laughter, nearly spilling his wine. "That's my girl!" He wiped tears of mirth from his eyes. "Next time, let me know so I can set up the camera." The corner of Wednesday's mouth twitched almost imperceptibly. "Father," she said, "if you'd been there, those piranhas might have suffered indigestion from overexcited spectators." Right then, "Whoa! Piranhas? Cool!" The voice came from beside Wednesday. The Addamses turned as if on cue. A black-haired boy had somehow appeared in the back seat, sitting cross-legged and clutching a deformed human skull. He wore a black leather jacket with a silver spider brooch at the collar and grinned so wide it looked like a practiced expression. His eyes were dark and glossy, like obsidian catching sunlight. "Hi there," he said, waving with too much enthusiasm, nearly smacking Wednesday in the face. "Mind if I hitch a ride?" Wednesday raised her eyebrows the tiniest fraction, the height of her astonishment. Morticia narrowed hers. "Child, where did you get on?" "The back seat," the boy shrugged, as if that explained everything. "You didn't lock the door." Gomez blinked. "We did lock it." "Locked?" The boy tilted his head, puzzled. "Oh, maybe I remembered wrong. Perhaps it was the trunk." He patted a coffin-shaped suitcase beside him. "Seriously, your trunk design is thoughtful. It even has a pillow." Wednesday stared at him with a look that could freeze blood. "Who are you?" she asked. "Right. Introductions." He slapped his forehead with comic force. "I'm Victor Black. Call me Vic, or that lunatic, or chocolate fiend. Wait, never mind." He thrust the skull at Wednesday. "A gift. From my collection. Figured you'd appreciate it." Wednesday took it, fingertips tracing the cracks. The skull had been specially treated. Its surface was smooth, with dried blood staining the eye sockets. The corner of her mouth lifted a millimeter. "She likes it." Vic crowed and leaned so close you could count eyelashes. "I knew it. See Venom. What did I tell you?" His collar twitched. A black, slimy mass slithered free, forming a vast maw lined with serrated teeth. It spoke in a low rasp, like sandpaper over metal. "She's sweeter than chocolate." Wednesday's eyes widened the faintest degree. "It can talk?" she said. "It has a name," the thing said, offended. "Ignore it. It's just hungry," Vic waved. "By the way, you don't mind me hitching a ride, do you?" "I meant to ride my motorcycle, but Venom reminded me. Vic, you almost killed 3 crows last time, so we hitched a ride," Venom finished with a sigh. "And those 3 crows suit us later." Morticia offered a smile that revealed a hint of blade. "Of course we don't mind, Wednesday." Wednesday lowered her head a fraction, studying the skull. "Why this car?" she asked, almost bored. Vic grinned, teeth too white against his dark look. "Because your car is the coolest." "And it smells like murder," Venom added, inhaling deeply. "Ah, the fresh scent of death." Wednesday's mouth curved another millimeter. The hearse rolled on, and soon the spires of Nevermore Academy loomed ahead beneath a sky like old bruises. Vic hopped out, stretching, Venom lazily unfurling across his shoulder. "Ah, new life, new friends, corpses?" Vic tilted his head at the stone crow statues atop the gate. "Venom, are those real or specimens?" "If they're specimens, that's a pity," Venom said, licking non-existent lips. "I bet they'd be delicious." Wednesday remained beside him, skull cradled in her hands. "Oh, right," Vic slapped his forehead again. "Venom, a little help?" A black tentacle slid out, coiled around the skull in Wednesday's palm, and then vanished back into Vic's collar, as if stowing it away. Wednesday raised one eyebrow. "Convenient." "Super convenient," Vic said, delighted. "We can hide chocolate, keys, daggers. And your brain, if you have one," Venom muttered. "Shut up, Venom." Headmistress Larissa Weems stood on the steps with arms crossed, silver-gray hair swept back. Her gaze swept over them like a blade. Wednesday Addams, she acknowledged, voice low and authoritative. And Victor Black. Hi, Auntie. Vic waved, nearly colliding with a passing student. Larissa's mouth twitched. I'm your cousin, she supplied. Close enough, Vic grinned. My mom's well, she's something. Dad's who knows what. Maybe an alien? Or an idiot, Venom muttered. Wednesday glanced at him. You're related? Distantly, super distant. Vic made a grand gesture. About 3 or 4 galaxies apart. Larissa sighed, a sound that instantly made her look older. Your dorm assignments are ready. Wednesday, you'll room with Enid Sinclair. Victor, you're assigned with Wednesday. Vic shot his hand up like a child in class. Larissa's eyes narrowed. No. Why? Because you're a boy. That's sexist, and how dare you assume my gender? What if I'm a Walmart shopping bag? Vic protested, turning to Venom. Say something. She's the headmistress, Vic, Venom said patiently. Traitor. Wednesday's voice was soft but direct. I don't mind. All eyes turned to her. If he can be quiet, she added. Vic clamped a hand over his mouth and nodded so vigorously his head bobbed. Larissa rubbed her temples and then, with a resigned exhale, said, Suit yourselves. And so they took their first steps onto Nevermore's grounds. An Addams, a Black, and a Symbiote, with the whisper of leaves and the scent of iron in the air. Chapter 2. Nevermore's Unusual Roommate. When the dorm door swung open, Enid Sinclair was sitting on her bed, painting her nails a bright, obnoxious pink. Sunlight slanted through the window, catching the short golden hair streaked with blue and pink, and making her look like a walking neon rainbow. Wow, Vic whistled. I love your taste. Enid looked up and froze. Her eyes darted from Wednesday to Vic, then landed on a black head peeking out from Vic's shoulder. Who are you? She asked, her voice climbing 3 octaves. I'm Vic, he said, grinning. This is Venom. He pointed at himself, then at the black head. We're your new roommates. Enid glanced at Wednesday. You're joking, right? Wednesday shook her head. Unfortunately, no. Hey, Vic protested, we're super fun. Venom chimed in with a slow nod, especially when he goes crazy. Enid blinked and then burst into a wide grin. All right? She hopped off the bed and offered her hand. I'm Enid Sinclair. Vic grabbed it with theatrical enthusiasm. Victor Black. Also, you smell like strawberry chocolate. Venom said it. I did not say that, Venom protested. Wednesday crossed to her own bed, set down a single, carefully chosen suitcase, and said flatly, If you're planning to talk all night, I will nail your tongues to the wall. Vic and Enid fell silent at the same time. Venom muttered, She's crazier than we are. Vic brightened. I absolutely love her. Enid looked from Wednesday to Vic and laughed. You two are ridiculous. For a second, she seemed excited about Nevermore. That changed quickly. Wednesday pulled out a small hammer from her suitcase. Vic was perched on the windowsill, chewing on a suspiciously shaped chunk of chocolate. Wow, he mumbled, crumbs falling from his mouth. Are we demolishing the place? Wednesday didn't answer. She began arranging nails across the headboard with a deliberate, ritualistic calm. Enid watched, bewildered, and then froze when she saw Wednesday splash black paint across the wall. Wait, Enid's scream could have shattered glass. That's my wall. It was, Wednesday said without looking up. Now it's a Gothic installation called The Raven's Funeral. Vic leapt down and started hopping between the two of them like an overexcited crow. Venom, look, it's an art war. Venom's head emerged fully from Vic's shoulder and took in the room. Left side, melted rainbow candy. Right side, crushed cockroaches. I vote Wednesday. Traitor. Enid grabbed a pink cushion and chucked it at Venom. Without hesitation, Venom swallowed it whole. Hey, that was a limited edition unicorn cushion. Unfazed, Wednesday continued her renovations, replacing the bright curtains with black lace and pinning several specimen bats to the fabric. Vic leaned in, nose nearly touching a bat wing. Are these real? They were alive last week, Wednesday said calmly. Enid gasped. You can't just... I can. Wednesday turned and held up a glittering pair of tailor's scissors. Need me to demonstrate how to cut a rainbow? Vic suddenly planted himself between them, each hand tucked around a different piece of chocolate. Ceasefire, Enid, try this. 85% dark chocolate, bitter with a hint of Wednesday's soul. Wednesday, try this pink strawberry thing, the vulgar kind. Both chocolates collided with Vic's face at once. By the time Principal Larissa Weems pushed open the dorm was clearly divided down the middle. Enid's left side, an exploding rainbow unicorn zone, burst with color, plushies, and glitter. Wednesday's right side, a vampire tomb zone, was all black lace, pinned bats, and ominous decorations. Vic had claimed a small patch of floor by the bathroom door and was squatting there while Venom helped tape a crude Vic's territory sign onto the floor in black tape. "Why is your territory by the bathroom?" Larissa asked, eyebrow arched. "Democratic vote," Vic answered with mock solemnity. "Also, it's closest to death." He pointed proudly at the noose decoration Wednesday had hung on the bathroom door. "See? They provided a gallows." Larissa drew a steadying breath that said, "I am responsible for minors. Enid, show them around the academy and keep Vic away from anything flammable." "Or any living creatures," Wednesday added without missing a beat. Enid giggled, hair flashing in the sunlight like a bonfire. "Let's go. First stop, the quad." The quad sat at the heart of Nevermore Academy, ringed by Gothic spires and paved with weathered bluestone. A raven statue watched from the center. "Why do they call it the quad?" Wednesday asked, deadpan. "It's clearly a pentagon." Enid blinked. Tradition?" "Tradition is meant to be broken," Wednesday said, staring at the stones. "For instance, there are at least 3 corpses buried under this slab." Vic, ever eager, flopped flat against the flagstone and pressed an ear to it. "Venom! Quick, listen! The bones are singing!" All Venom could do was poke his head out and sigh. "All I hear are your brain cells crying. Hey, new faces!" A tall boy in a beanie strode over with an easy grin. "Ajax Petropoulos." He stuck out a hand. "Gorgon, don't touch my beanie unless you want to become a statue." "A Gorgon? Like Medusa? Do you—" Vic started, eyes lighting up. "Have snakes?" "Yes." Ajax winced and tapped his beanie. "They get moody." "So cool." Vic lunged to lift the beanie. "Let me see." "Wait, don't." Enid and Wednesday both took 3 long steps back. 3. The dividing line between quiet and noise. Swish! 3 emerald snakes shot out from a corner of Ajax's hat, tongues flicking. One of them lunged straight for Vic's finger. Crunch! Venom opened its enormous maw and chomped the snake's head off. The hallway fell silent. Ajax went pale. "My snake," Venom chewed twice, frowned, and said, tastes like gummy candy." "Don't worry," Vic said, patting Ajax on the shoulder. "Venom's digestive system is super strong. In 24 hours, it'll turn into some kind of black goo. At least it's more nutritious than a rainbow unicorn pillow," Wednesday deadpanned. "Hey!" Enid stamped her foot, the little leather shoe clicking sharply on the floor. "That was a limited edition." Ajax's hands trembled as he touched his hat. The remaining snake hair inside shivered. "I need to go to the infirmary." He staggered away like someone who'd survived an apocalypse. "What are you all arguing about?" A short black girl with arms folded approached, silver pupils glinting in the light. "Bianca Barkley," Enid whispered. "A 13. Don't mess with her." Vic's eyes lit up. "Can you sing Under the Sea?" He made a ridiculous dancing and singing gesture, nearly stepping on Wednesday's toe. Bianca narrowed her eyes. "Yes," she said, "but when I finish, you'll jump into the lake and drown." Vic produced a chocolate from his pocket. "Want a taste? 82% cocoa, dangerous and alluring as your gaze." She looked at the chocolate and, without warning, slapped it away. The bar arched through the air. "I hate sweets," she said coldly. Before Vic could react, Venom shot up from his shoulder. Black goo condensed into a massive, snarling face right in Bianca's path. "Those who waste food," Venom's voice boomed like distant thunder, "get added to my menu." Bianca's pupils narrowed, and she took a step back. Wednesday clapped once, quietly. "Splendid." Enid hurried to defuse things. All right. Vic, let's go see the 4." Her fingernails lengthened without her noticing and punctured Vic's jacket fabric. "Ow!" Vic cried theatrically. "Your claws!" She tugged him away by the arm. Bianca snorted and turned. Venom slithered back into Vic with a muttered, "She tastes like expired sea salt. Disgusting." "Wednesday," Principal Larissa called from down the corridor. "Your family is waiting at the gate." Wednesday swept her eyes over the group without expression. "Don't die before I get back," she said and left. Her black robe billowed like a moving shadow. Only Vic and Enid remained. Enid released Vic's arm and discovered 5 small holes in his sleeve. "Ah! Sorry, I sometimes can't control it." Her fingertips trembled. Her nails had retracted, but her fingertips were unnaturally red. Vic, not at all upset, seized her wrist with excitement. "Wow, your claws." He held her hand up to the light. So cool. Can they peel apples, open soda cans, be used as a craft knife? Enid, amused and suddenly less nervous, blinked. Are you serious? Of course. Vic fished an apple from somewhere, no one knew where, and offered it. Enid hesitated, then took it. Consciously lengthening her claws this time, she sliced the peel like ribbon. Perfect, Vic cheered, biting a huge chunk. Juice dribbled down his chin. Venom extended a tiny tendril to wipe it away. Enid looked at her hand and spoke quietly. I still can't transform fully. I can only extend my claws, and I don't have much control. Vic tossed the core into a bin 5 meters away with unnerving accuracy. So what? Venom always says my brain's waterlogged, but aren't we fine? Venom, it's a fact. Enid laughed. The sunset turned her blonde hair honey-colored. She nudged Vic. You're really strange. Thanks. Best compliment of the year. Vic flashed 2 small pointed canines. Come on, Enid said softly, taking his hand. Her fingertips hovered, careful not to touch his skin. They walked west along the stone path, shadows overlapping like an odd but harmonious pair. From the academy gate, Wednesday glanced back once. Shadows overlapping like a clumsy paper cut, she thought. The sun slipped under the horizon, the Gothic spires of Nevermore Academy swallowed by dusk. Corridor chatter faded into the special hush of night, only a faint chorus of insects from the stone seams. Moonlight slipped across sills, cold and silver. In the dorm, Vic was curled up in his kingdom, Venom draped like a black blanket and purring contentedly. Enid sat on the floor barefoot, headphones on, swaying gently to music. Her short blonde hair bounced, her pink nightgown glimmered in moonlight as she tiptoed and spun, hands tracing the air. Clack, clack, clack. Wednesday sat at the edge of her bed, fingers flying over an antique typewriter. Candlelight made her features harder, each keystroke like the fall of a gavel. Enid's dance grew wilder, a heel thudded. Wednesday's hands froze. Enid, Wednesday said, voice like a cellar door. If you make one more sound, I'll fashion your headphone cord into a noose. Enid took one earpiece out and blinked. What? I can't hear you. Wednesday turned slowly. The candlelight threw angular shadows across her face. Her hand brushed the small knife by the typewriter. I said, quiet. Enid pouted and turned the volume down a notch, though her foot still tapped the beat. Clack, clack, clack. Thump, thump, thump. The rhythms fought like 2 armies across the room. A vein throbbed at Wednesday's temple. She rose, walked over, and looked down at Enid. Do you know how the protagonist in my novel dies? She asked softly. Of old age? Enid guessed. Torn to shreds by a pack of monsters because she was too noisy, Wednesday said with a thin smile, pale teeth flashing. Very vivid description. Enid swallowed, then straightened. You can't take someone's music away just because you want to write a novel. I can. Wednesday's fingers tapped the knife, especially when the someone's taste is. She glanced at Enid's playlist, nauseating. Enid's cheeks flamed. This is Beyoncé. Sounds like a cat being strangled. You, Enid extended her claws. Chocolate, don't run. From Vic's bed came a muffled shout. Both girls turned. Vic lay asleep, eyes closed, talking to the ceiling. Chase it, he cried. Venom poked its head out, then withdrew. The tension eased. At least he's sleeping soundly, Enid whispered. Wednesday stared at Vic for a long beat, then returned to the typewriter. Clack, clack, clack. Enid hesitated, then switched off her music and curled into her bed, fingers rubbing the blanket edge. Moonlight painted a silver line on the floor. Wednesday's half dark, Enid's half rainbow. A few minutes later, the typing stopped. If you must listen to music, Wednesday said without looking up, you can use my record player. Enid sat up. Beside Wednesday's bed, an old gramophone loomed, a thin dust ring on a black vinyl. Really? Enid asked. Better than your strangled cat, Wednesday said, and the edge in her voice softened. Enid patted over, eyes bright, and ran her fingers through Wednesday's collection. Mozart, Chopin, Danse Macabre? Her fingers slid to a pitch-black disc. That's my favorite, Wednesday said, a faint hint of pride. Enid placed the record carefully. A low cello note unfurled, slow as fog. Enid swayed, but this time her movements were feather-light. Wednesday's fingers returned to the typewriter, and the typing found a rhythm that oddly matched the music. Clack, 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 thump, thump, thump. The sounds no longer clashed. They braided together into an eerie harmony. In the corner, Vic turned over. Venom peeked at the 2 girls and murmured, "Humans are so strange," then shut its eyes and purred. Chapter 4. Disaster Recipes, Born in Nevermore. When the first ray of morning sunlight slipped through the gap in the curtains, Enid Sinclair dreamed she was swimming in a sea of rainbow syrup. A slurp, slurp, slurp yanked her awake. Who's drinking soup this early? She mumbled, turning over and burying her face in her unicorn pillow. It's not soup, came Wednesday's voice from the opposite bed, cold as ice. It's some kind of mixture from hell. Enid's eyes snapped open. Vic Black sat cross-legged in what he proudly called his toilet kingdom corner. A bowl of pitch-black noodles in front of him, drowned in a thick brown sauce that looked like something between tar and something far less appetizing. A long, sinuous thing, Venom, draped over his shoulder, half its body leaning out to use its tendrils as chopsticks, scooping the noodles and slurping them like spaghetti. "Good morning, ladies," Vic grinned. The corners of his mouth ringed with suspicious black residue. "Want some? I just got back from the cafeteria. Honestly, the Academy's food has zero creativity, so I cooked it myself. Ta-da! Squid ink noodles with chocolate sauce, double the richness." Wednesday and Enid exchanged a look that read, "How can humans live like this? You call this food?" Wednesday's voice was flat and chill, like someone who'd just opened a morgue drawer. "This looks like cursed swamp sludge. Tastes like it too." Vic slurped another generous mouthful. "Venom says this stuff has more chew than brains." Venom bobbed its head, and the chocolate hides the fishiness of the squid ink. Perfect. Enid's nose twitched. Her werewolf senses picked up the impossible mix of sweet and salty, and her stomach gave a very public protest. How did you even think to mix those two things?" she asked, struggling for words. This plate, if it could be called that, felt like culinary Frankenstein. "Inspiration comes from life," Vic declared, twirling a clump of black noodles on a fork. "Last night I saw Wednesday eating squid ink noodles and Enid with a chocolate bar, and my genius mind had a flash. And then, short-circuited," Wednesday interrupted, deadpan. "Normal people would assume these belong in different meals, not a taste catastrophe." Vic didn't care. He pushed the bowl forward with a grin. "Don't be shy. Venom made 2 extra servings." Enid and Wednesday exchanged another look and reached a rare, unanimous decision. They absolutely would not eat it. Wednesday swung her legs out of bed and walked over to Vic, inspecting the bowl like someone assessing a 3-week-old cadaver. "Let me guess," she said slowly, toes peeking from under her robe. "Your taste buds were eaten by Venom as a child." "Hey!" Venom sounded affronted. "I only eat brains and chocolate. Don't slander me." Vic shoved another forkful into his mouth. "Don't be so picky, Wednesday. Life is about daring to try new things." "Life should also include daring to admit mistakes," Wednesday said calmly. "For example, you could admit right now that this bowl is a desecration of the culinary arts." Enid wrinkled her nose and leaned a hair closer. A few strands of her short golden hair stood up as if static charged. I actually love chocolate," she whispered, "but this is just too perfect?" Vic looked at her hopefully. "Too disgusting," Enid blurted. Vic dramatically clutched his chest. "Oh, my heart is broken. Venom, they don't understand our art." Venom licked its lips. "Don't be mean, girls. Want to try a bite?" It scooped up a small tangle of noodles with a tendril and offered it around. Enid recoiled like a cat, fur metaphorically puffed up. Wednesday stared at the offered clump like it was a murder weapon. "If you ever pollute the air with that stuff again," she said softly, "I will give you an enema with chocolate sauce." Venom paused. "Is she serious?" Vic nodded. "I think so." Enid rubbed her temples. "Vic, normal people don't add chocolate to squid ink noodles." "But I'm not normal," Vic declared, proud. "On that point, I can't argue," Wednesday said without emotion. Half an hour later, the trio, plus a symbiote, arrived in the Nevermore Academy cafeteria. Enid sat as far from Vic as the table would allow, clutching a plate of perfectly normal human food: fried eggs, bacon, pancakes, and a chocolate milkshake. Wednesday had a single cup of black coffee, as if her body ran on bitterness and disdain. Vic returned with another huge plate labeled experimental breakfast. "Look," he crowed. "I improved the recipe." The pile on his plate included sausages slathered in peanut butter, scrambled eggs drizzled with maple syrup, bacon layered with strawberry jam, a bowl of cereal soaked in cola. Enid's fork froze midway to her mouth. "Seriously?" "Of course." Vic scooped a spoonful of cola-soaked cereal. "Venom says carbs and fizzy drinks are a perfect match." Venom emerged from Vic's shoulder, licking its lips. We watched a food documentary last night. Wednesday took one sip of coffee and looked at them both with flat, unamused eyes. I hope the director of that documentary has committed suicide by now, she said. Bianca Barclay walked past with her own tray and glanced at Vic's cuisine. The corner of her mouth twitched in a way that suggested equal parts horror and amusement. Do werewolves all eat like this now? She asked Enid, voice laced with thin sympathy. Enid scooted an inch farther away. I am not affiliated with him, she said quickly. We're roommates, Vic protested. Bianca sneered and was about to move on when Vic held out a peanut butter-covered sausage like, "Want a taste?" Her expression made it obvious she'd rather gnaw on her own vocal cords. I'd rather eat my own vocal cords. Wednesday clapped once, softly. Finally, someone speaks my mind. After the breakfast disaster, the three of them stood before the Academy's course announcement board. Nevermore's schedule was written in blood-red ink that looked like runes. Werewolf Sociology. Location, Moonlight Courtyard. Advanced Fencing and Assassination Arts. Location, second floor training ground. Siren Hypnosis Theory and Practical Application. Location, Black Lake Dock. Toxicology and Pastry Making. Location, Kitchen. Wednesday's finger went straight to the fencing class, her black robe swishing around her. I'm going here, she announced. Vic leaned in, eyes bright. Fencing? Cool. I can be your sparring partner. Wednesday gave him a look as sharp as a blade. If you come within 3 meters of me, my sword will accidentally pierce your throat. Wow, so fierce, Vic said, backing up with an exaggerated shiver. Then he turned to Enid. Then I'll go with little wolf girl to the werewolf class. Enid's ears flushed pink. Who allowed you to call me little wolf girl? She stammered, claws appearing for half a second before she forced them back in. Outsiders are not welcome in werewolf classes. Vic produced, as if from nowhere, a battered paperback titled How to Tame Your Little Wolf Girl and flipped to a bookmarked page. The book says werewolves love being scratched behind the ears. That's for dogs! Enid snatched the book and smacked him on the head. Her hair puffed out like a startled dandelion, and an odd warm tingle spread at the base of her spine, as though a tail might sprout any second, even though she hadn't grown one. Wednesday had already started to walk away, but her voice floated back over her shoulder. Record it. I want to see how he dies. Chapter 5. Partners are prohibited in werewolf class. In the Moonlight Courtyard, more than a dozen werewolf students sat cross-legged on the grass. Vic squeezed in eagerly next to Enid, Venom wriggling excitedly on his shoulder. Finally, I'm going to see a werewolf transformation, he whispered. Professor Greyback, a gray-haired man with a monocle, adjusted his glasses and opened a heavy, ancient tome. Today's topic is the history of werewolf social structure and the development of territorial awareness, he droned. Vic and Venom tilted their heads in unison. 5 minutes later, during the Third Full Moon War, Alpha Wolves' urine-marking methods underwent a revolutionary breakthrough. Greyback's voice was thick and clinging, like a pot of overcooked oatmeal. Vic's eyelids started to droop, his head heavy as lead. He slid forward until his forehead lightly bumped Enid's shoulder. Hey! Enid tried to push him away, but when her fingers brushed his black hair, they froze. He had fallen asleep. Sunlight filtered through the leaves, dappling his lashes. Without his usual exaggerated expressions and loud mouth, his sleeping face was unexpectedly attractive, nose delicately shaped, lips slightly parted, breath warm against her collarbone with a faint hint of chocolate. Enid flushed hot red. Sinclair! Greyback barked out of nowhere. Please recount the scent etiquette in werewolf diplomacy. Enid jerked upright and Vic slid onto her lap with the movement, a muffled murmur escaping him. Every werewolf in class turned to look. I mean. Her fingers, without thinking, twirled a lock of Vic's hair. Using the third nail of the left front paw, dipped in saliva. Wrong, it's the right paw. Greyback slammed his fist on the lectern. Vic burrowed against Enid's leg and snored softly. Venom slithered out of his sleeve and whispered in Enid's ear, Want to hear how he wet the bed until he was 5? Yes, Enid whispered, still red, her right hand somehow already holding Vic's. The lecture finally ended half an hour later. Practical session, Greyback announced, shrugging off his jacket to reveal a torso covered in scars. Observe my transformation. Vic's eyes snapped open, shining like searchlights. Whoa, rated R content. Greyback's bones began to twist, fur sprouting wildly from his skin. Just as the change was about to complete, "Professor!" Vic shot up a hand. "When you transform without clothes, is that streaking in front of the whole school?" Silence fell so hard it was audible. Greyback froze, his half-human, half-wolf face flushing. "You," his voice grated. "And also," Vic went on, digging himself deeper, "do your pants rip? If you wore stretchy underwear, would it—" "Get out!" Greyback swiped the lectern with a claw. Splinters flew, and before anyone could react, the professor grabbed Vic and hurled him in a wide arc toward the courtyard gate. "Wait, I haven't finished." Bang! The gate slammed shut. Vic slid down with his face pressed to the door. Venom peeked out from his collar. "Congratulations," it said. "Record time for the fastest expulsion from werewolf class." Enid's voice came muffled through the door. "Vic, are you okay?" Greyback's roar followed. "Sinclair, sit down. From now on, bringing partners to werewolf class is forbidden." Expelled, Vic wandered the academy corridors, Venom draped around his neck like a black scarf. "Where to now? Peek at the sirens bathing?" Venom suggested. "Too lowbrow," Vic replied. "I have a better idea." A door to a nearby building opened, and Wednesday Addams stepped out. Her black hair was a little disheveled, a strip of bandage peeking at her temple. Her fingers pressed lightly to her head, irritated. Perfect target for a prank. Vic grinned and tiptoed up behind her, ready to jump. He stepped on his own untied shoelace. "Wah!" He lunged forward. His hands shot out instinctively. Wednesday was shoved forward a step. She recovered, turned, and her pupils pinched into tiny points. Boom! A heavy sculpture crashed from the roof and struck the spot where Vic had been standing a moment before, where Wednesday had been standing a second earlier. Dust blew up. Wednesday stood frozen, fingers trembling. "That idiot! Was he crushed to paste?" "I should be glad," said another voice. "Why? Is my chest tight? It's harder to breathe." Wednesday stared at the rubble and realized she had been clenching her teeth so hard her molars ached, an odd physiological reaction not mentioned in any of her anatomy notes. "Wednesday! Look out!" Xavier barreled around the corner, then stopped halfway as if to tackle her. He had seen the sculpture tilt and rush toward Wednesday from afar. Now he looked from the rubble to Wednesday and realized she was fine, but whoever had been where she stood was probably not. A high-pitched wail came from under the stones. "Ow, my butt!" Venom's voice drifted out of the debris. "Stop the act. When those mad scientists cut you into 4 pieces last time, you didn't scream this pitifully." Black ooze pushed the rubble aside. Vic staggered up, nearly split in two, his lower half at a grotesque angle. Xavier inhaled sharply. Then, under both their eyes, Vic's injuries began to reorganize. Bones snapped back into place with a cheery series of cracks. Skin and muscle knit visibly. Within 10 seconds, he brushed dust off his clothes like nothing had happened. "Whoa," he said, twisting his waist. "Healed faster than last time." Silence swallowed the courtyard. Wednesday's face was pale, mouth a thin line. Vic leaned close and cocked his head. "Were you worried about me just now?" "Preposterous," she said, colder than ice. "I was merely calculating whether the falling trajectory conformed to a parabolic arc." "Oh?" Vic grinned and pointed at her. "Then why are you shaking?" Wednesday hid her hands behind her back. Xavier finally choked out. What are you exactly? Me? No, I should say we." Vic spread his arms. Venom's ferocious face, 2 rows of sharp teeth, filled half of his own. "Venom." Wednesday turned and walked away, her black uniform billowing like storm clouds. "Hey, Wednesday!" Vic called. "You never answered my question." She paused for a beat, then without looking back, tossed over her shoulder. "If you ask such idiotic questions again, I will personally test the limits of your regeneration." The tips of her ears were faintly red. Her hidden fingers dug into her palm, using the pain to suppress a strange, writhing sensation she couldn't name. Heat rose through her like holding a scalpel too close to a flame. She didn't understand it. Vic glanced at the fallen sculpture. The trajectory hadn't looked right. What was the parabolic formula again? Pi r squared. Never mind. He followed Wednesday to the dorms with a grin, bouncing along. Back in the room, urged by Venom, Vic fished out a pile of chocolates from the toilet tank. He sat on the floor and fed them to Venom as if it were a pet. "Oh, my head," Venom slurred, slowly melting into a puddle of black ooze that burped tiny, chocolate-scented bubbles. Vic unwrapped a chocolate and bit into it, eyes lighting up. Booyah! Liqueur-filled. Little wolf girl has good taste. Hmm. Vic is an idiot, Venom mumbled. Every time you regenerate, you use up my chocolate reserves. I'm starving. Wednesday's right hand, flying over an antique typewriter, stopped. So his immortality requires energy replenishment. If he had insufficient energy after the crash, clack, 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 she resumed typing, slower now, distracted. In the art studio, Xavier frantically waved his brush. A horrifying canvas took shape. Vic bound in chains on a metal operating table, chest pierced by tubes, a figure in a white lab coat brandishing a chainsaw, jars of floating organs in the background. Xavier slammed a hand over the painting and shuddered. Outside, a raven winged by, a chocolate wrapper clamped in its beak. 6. Nevermore excavator incident. Clack, clack, clack. Wednesday set aside the chaotic thoughts in her head and let her slender, pale fingers dance across the brass keys of the antique typewriter, striking a steady, ruthless rhythm. She needed something to drown out the unfamiliar emotion knotting in her chest. She was composing a death scene in her latest novel, the protagonist crushed slowly by a poetic contraption of rusty gears, and it required focus and exacting attention to pain. Clack, clack, claw! Help, Wednesday! Save me! I'm dying. I'm really dying. A shrill, theatrical wail erupted from the bathroom and obliterated her concentration. Wednesday's brow barely twitched. Her fingertips hovered over the keys. Damn it. The boy could not survive a single day without manufacturing a noise disaster and a black hole of attention. Wednesday! Goddess! Queen of Goth! Please, I can't shake this thing off. It's fallen in love with my butt. The pleas grew more desperate, accompanied by a strange, squelchy slapping sound. Wednesday inhaled, holding the practiced stillness of her expression, and decided to ignore the farce. She pressed her fingers back to the keys. Clack! Clah! The bathroom door slammed open with a bang. Vic shot out like a pale, panicked torpedo, face contorted in genuine or expertly feigned terror. The first, obvious fact, he wasn't wearing pants. His pajama bottoms, printed with warped smiley faces and the words "Good Morning Despair," pooled around his ankles, tripping him as he scrambled and making him look like a captive penguin. The more consequential fact, his backside was bare. Wednesday, who could face murder charges, vengeful spirits, or her parents' smothering affection without blinking, felt her mind go blank as if something had sucked all thought into a vacuum. A tiny flicker of panic, so small she would never admit it, flickered in the depths of her dark pool eyes. Her typewriter fell silent. Wednesday, help me! It's got a grip! What the hell is it? Vic cried as he tried to peer at his rear while stumbling toward her. Just as her rationality was about to reassert itself and dictate the nearest sharp object for self-defense, Wednesday's gaze slid past Vic's terrified face and focused on the uninvited guest attached to his left cheek. A severed hand clung to his buttock, all 5 fingers digging in, patting smugly and rhythmically like a long-lost comrade refusing to let go. It was Thing, the little helper her parents had sent, the presence she'd felt at the edge of her vision. Thing had chosen a spectacularly absurd debut. The absurdity didn't end there. A slick, black mass surged from the hollow of Vic's lower back, coalescing into a fang-lined face. Venom. But it wasn't panicked. It was giddy, like a creature that had discovered a formula for viral fame. One tendril held Vic's phone, screen angled at the assaulted buttock, while another tapped and swiped. Hold that angle, Vic. Yes! Struggle more realistically. Venom cackled in a low rasp. Title it Mysterious Hand Haunts Butt at Nevermore. Exclusive live footage. Campus mystery, social death, what the hell, click to see bare butt student, add a few more tags. It even mimicked the camera's click and flash. Venom, you traitor, help me get this thing off, don't film it. Vic screamed. Shut up, we're recording. This clip is gonna blow up. YouTube split 70-30. My 70, your 30. Venom replied. Wednesday watched the spectacle, a pantsless boy running toward her, a severed hand glued to his butt, and an alien symbiote gleefully directing a live broadcast. A dull ache began to throb at her temples. The dark, elegant aesthetic she had cultivated her whole life was being ground into the dust of lowbrow farce. She inhaled, tasting the idiot virus Vic carried and the sour stink of viral ambition. Then her barbed tongue engaged, cold and precise as a scalpel. Vic. Her voice was flat as polished coffin wood. The noise around her seemed to freeze. If your stupid, pale, sunlight-deprived backside comes within 3 feet of me, Her gaze swept his lower half with the clinical disdain of an anatomist appraising a substandard specimen. I will have Thing take up permanent residence there and order it to report to me in Morse code every midnight about any temperature changes it perceives. She turned to Venom, who was still enthusiastically filming. As for you, she said, contempt like acid in her voice, if that video appears on any online platform, I will find every chocolate stash you own, including the one behind the toilet tank, and melt them, one by one, into a revolting brown sludge in front of you to fertilize the most mediocre sunflowers in the Academy garden. Finally, she addressed Thing, which had stopped patting and now looked abashed, rising on its index and middle fingers to regard her. Get off my unfortunate roommate's local area. Now, then explain yourself, about my parents, and your inexplicable taste preferences. Silence fell. Vic's cry choked off. Venom's filming tendril froze. Thing let go with a theatrical plop, collapsed onto the floor, and then scurried on its fingers to the foot of Wednesday's bed, curling like a chastened child. Vic stood dumbstruck, alternating between flushing and paling as he fumbled to pull up his pants. Venom slowly sluiced back into his body, muttering, "Evil sunflower gardener." Wednesday sat back down in front of her typewriter as if the intrusion had been nothing more than a broadcast interruption. Clack, clack, clack. The steady tapping resumed, a cold finale for the buttock crisis. The room filled with the rustle of Vic dressing, Venom's resentful mumblings, probably mourning its shattered internet stardom, and the faint friction of things squirming on the floor. At the corner of her mouth, imperceptible to anyone who didn't know her, a twitch betrayed the smallest victory. This place was a disaster, an endless parade of bare-butted idiots, social media-obsessed symbiotes, and overfond severed hands. And she was, worryingly, beginning to get used to it. The thought itself was the most terrifying thing of all. 7. Nefermore's escape guide. Click, clack, click. The typewriter's keys became frantic and cold, each strike a nail hammered hard into a coffin lid. Wednesday stared at the slightly curled sheet, the lingering words, buttocks, weird hand, live stream, churning her stomach. This disaster, this vulgar, idiotic, aesthetically bankrupt farce, was the last straw. Not straw. This was the crowd trapped in a teenage prison. What her parents called paradise, Nevermore Academy, was to her merely a place crawling with rainbow-haired werewolves, and that she refused to replay that bare-assed image in her head. It was time. The escape plan had to go into motion. Her eyes slid over the itinerary Principal Larissa had left on her desk that morning. Every Wednesday, 3 p.m., Jericho Town, Dr. Kinbot's psychological counseling. What had been a nauseating routine was suddenly a ticket to freedom. The town sat at the forest edge, foot traffic sparse and surveillance outdated, a perfect surgical incision. She'd already mapped the route. Midway through the session, claimed she needed the restroom, slip into the clinic's bathroom, and escape through the pipes. She knew how to hail a cab to the train station. After that, the wide world. Simple, efficient, elegant. At 2:50, Wednesday walked toward the principal's car at the academy entrance, carrying her black suitcase, essentials, a change of black clothes, a cipher notebook, 3 throwing knives, a bag of preservatives, and her diary, moving as though to execution. Principal Larissa sat in the driver's seat, tall, immaculate, silver-gray bun in place. She nodded through the window, concern and authority practiced into routine. Wednesday reached for the rear door and froze. There was already someone in the back seat. Victor Black. He wore that black t-shirt printed with "My other t-shirt was eaten by Venom," slouched and engaged in a heated, whispered argument with the Venom perched on his shoulder. "It's your fault. I told you that old copper alchemist looked dry as a stick. Definitely not tasty." Venom twisted, forming a large mouth and baring teeth. "Bullshit. You pounced first. You said he smells like expired communion wafers and sin. How is that my fault? That was a metaphor, a figure of speech. Who knew you'd actually take a bite? You were chomping away even more eagerly than me, and you said dispensing heavenly justice. Now you're blaming me for all the counseling sessions? If you weren't always chanting brains, 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 chocolate-flavored brains in my head, would I even make that association?" Wednesday felt as if she'd plunged into an icy abyss. Her escape plan, the precise, dark, elegant blueprint for flight, had collided violently with the biggest, most unpredictable, and loudest variable possible. Principal Larissa, catching Wednesday frozen in the rearview mirror, explained as if commenting on the weather, "This one bit a certain creature's head off last week. Dr. Kinbot recommended Victor start regular counseling too. It's on the way, so we're going together." On the way. Wednesday's fingertips grew numb. It was like shoving a circus clown with a cheap stereo and cheaper chocolate into the transport van intended for an execution. Vic finally noticed her at the door, cut off his argument with Venom, and broke into a grin she considered monumentally idiotic. "Wednesday! Wow, you're going too. Great, we can team up. I heard Dr. Kinbot likes sandbox games. We could build a chocolate fountain. Or build that creature's head," Venom added, then was frantically muffled by Vic. Wednesday's eyes went utterly dead. She stared at Vic's face, plastered with "harmless idiot," and through him watched the train from her plan speed away, kicking up dust. Her fingers tightened on the suitcase handle until her knuckles whitened. The greatest distance in the world isn't between life and death, but between an elegant escape plan and the deadweight teammate you're forced to bring along. The plan needed to change, or eliminate the variable entirely. Her gaze flicked to Vic's neck, calculating the feasibility of a throwing knife. "Get in, Miss Addams. We'll be late," Principal Larissa urged, tone leaving no room for argument. Wednesday drew breath, the air already saturated with idiocy and the scent of chocolate. With a posture bordering on tragic resolve, she slid into the car and slammed the door. She sat in the corner farthest from Vic, tense, staring straight ahead. Her escape had transformed from a solo, elegant stealth operation into a chaotic breakout forced to carry two deadweights. This was hell on extra difficult. Vic, oblivious to the penguin-freezing aura beside him, continued whispering to Venom, gleeful. "See? I told you we're a community of fate, even psychological counseling together." Venom, "Shut up, idiot. She's thinking about how to toss us into a wood chipper." Wednesday's mouth twitched, almost imperceptibly. The car was a moving metal coffin, rumbling down the forest path. Vic's voice never stopped. His first subject had been the philosophical significance of the Academy's greenbelt vegetation, a topic promptly shut down by Principal Larissa's rearview glare. Undeterred, Vic redirected his artillery. "Wednesday, look at that tree outside. Doesn't it look like a hanged fat man swaying in the wind?" "Wednesday, do you think psychiatrists have telepathy? Could I read his mind back?" "Wednesday, what's your favorite torture device? I bet it's the one with little gears." "Wednesday!" She sat like an obsidian statue, hands folded, gaze fixed forward, mimicking Larissa's silent defense, an invisible wall built from absolute silence to block Vic's verbal noise. The wall corroded under the relentless, illogical onslaught. "Speaking of which, lunch today was really thrilling, huh? Who would have thought Thing had that kind of hobby? But seriously, my butt feels kinda amazing now, like a heavy sense of being chosen by history. Don't you think?" When his chatter lurched back into that obscene farce, the taut string of Wednesday's nerves snapped with a sharp ping. At once, those blindingly white, jiggling, idiotic images flooded her mind. Shame, though she'd never admit it, resentment, and pure disgust broke through her rational dam. "Shut up," she turned. Her right hand moved with lightning speed and clamped over Vic's mouth, carrying an aura fierce enough to strip paint. The world went quiet. Her palm registered the warm softness of Vic's lips and his surprised exhale, laced with the lingering scent of chocolate. In that exact instant, sudden and inevitable, her psychic ability activated. Boom, like a thunderclap with no sound, Wednesday's vision went pitch black, then was instantly swallowed by a blinding white. The car window, the trees, the back of Larissa's head, everything twisted, dissolved, and collapsed. She was hurled through a kaleidoscopic tunnel where time buckled and stuttered. When sight returned, she was no longer in the cramped car. She hovered, ghost-like, outside that reality in a cold, pale world that smelled of disinfectant. Harsh surgical lights picked out an operating table at the center. Strapped to it, pale and almost translucent, was a small boy, Vic, a young Vic. His eyes were wide, pupils full of pure terror. His face was streaked with tears and cold sweat. He pulled against metal restraints, wrists ground bloody where the shackles bit into him. Around the table moved figures in white coats, their faces hidden behind grotesque bird-beak masks. Their glass eyepieces made them look more like instruments than people. Calm, clinical, unreadable. A scalpel descended, its steel catching the light. "Oh, please, it hurts. Mom, Mommy." The boy's scream shredded the sterile air, small and raw and utterly alone. No one answered, only the clatter of metal and the flat voices on a monitor recording data. The scene sped up and replayed, once, twice, 10 times 100. The same table, the same cold blade, the same weakening cries. Wednesday felt like a forced spectator to a cruel, repeating ritual. Days collapsed into one another. She watched fear in Vic's eyes drain into numbness, screams falter into silent tears, tears dry up. Where fear had lived, a hollow grew. From that hollow, a strange, twisted light kindled. In a later surgery, as the blade fell, Vic spoke. His voice was hoarse, oddly jaunty. "Hey, Mr. Birdbeak, you hold that knife like a virgin cutting steak for the first time. And you, assistant, your waist-to-hip ratio is tragic. Your husband probably prefers the bar to your bed, doesn't he? Your experimental data is sliding faster than your receding hairline." He hurled barbed insults at the white-coated figures, attacking their skills, their spouses, their very competence. Wednesday watched, stunned, as the Birdbeak stopped moving so fluidly, hesitated, then stiffened. One researcher flung down his instrument, grabbed a needle and thread, and began to stitch Vic's lips shut. No anesthesia, one coarse stitch at a time. The needle punched flesh, pulling black thread tight. Vic shuddered. Full speech was impossible now. Only suppressed, guttural laughter bubbled up, delirious and unhinged. Madness glittered behind his eyes. Time slid again. The operating table stood empty. The white coats came less often, as if they'd abandoned this failed product with the stitched mouth. Vic sat like an odd, neglected specimen in a large cage, huddled in a corner while the lab's focus shifted. Transparent containers lined the room, each holding a slimy, writhing life form that changed color and texture. The researchers circled them like worshippers, recording and pointing, faces lit with fanatic anticipation. Wednesday felt Vic's long, fixed stare on those things, particularly one container with a black life form, denser than night. Time stretched. One by one, the colorful specimens lost their glow, faded to gray, withered, died. Fanaticism curdled into anxiety, then into a vacuum of silence. All that remained was the black sludge, fragile, barely alive, and yet, as Wednesday perceived it, burning with an unrelenting will. Don't want to die, live, hunger, desire, bind, survive. It was a primitive, absolute hunger to continue, furious in its simplicity. Even as a viscous lump that could dissolve at any moment, that insistence to exist burned fiercely. Vic watched too. He stopped hugging his knees, rose, pressed his palms to the cage bars, and fixed his gaze on the black mass. One night the lab was empty. Vic lifted his head. For the first time, something else flickered behind his hollow eyes. He walked to his cage door and silently fiddled with the lock. No one would have known when he'd learned to do that. The bolt clicked. He stepped out. He didn't run for a door or a window. He walked straight to the container with the black thing. He stood in front of the reinforced glass for a long, terrible second, then banged his fist into it. Thud. Knuckles split and began to bleed. Thud. Thud. He smashed at the glass with grim, stubborn rhythm, right hand, then left, until bone showed like a raw white under the skin. When his hands gave out, he used his head, smashing until his stitched mouth, still wired with black thread, gurgled with suppressed, crazed laughter, as if he were venting every ounce of despair, rage, and that twisted hunger for life. Alarms screamed. The white coats rushed in, weapons trained on his back. "Turn around! Now!" someone barked. Vic stopped. He turned, slow as a sun-cracked clock. He bore no wounds. His hands, impossibly, were intact, as if the self-mutilation had been an illusion. In his arms sat the shattered container, jagged glass and empty now. The researchers stood, horror-struck. The rough stitches at the corners of his mouth began to snap, thread by thread. Black thread gave way and blood threaded down his chin. When the final thread snapped, something monstrous uncurled in his face, an enormous, grotesque smile, wide and wrong in a way that made Wednesday's stomach drop. "Let's..." His voice was hoarse but oddly bright, too bright. "Play a game of survival. You have 3 seconds to prepare." Black, viscous liquid, alive as it pulsed, seeped from the torn seams of his mouth and ran over his cheeks. It advanced fast, slick and hungry, shrouding him. It swelled into a massive, monstrous shadow, teeth nameless and terrible forming in the dark, a shape born of both him and the thing that had nested inside the glass. Then the vision snapped away. As her consciousness snapped back to the car, Wednesday understood one last thing. The symbiote that had wrapped around Vic in the dark had not simply found a host. It had found a soul more desperate than the night itself. They were not parasite and host, but two wrecked ships, clinging to each other in a storm, anchoring one another toward the same ruin. 9. Vic's other side. Wednesday snatched her hand back as if she'd touched a searing iron. She panted, cold sweat beading on her forehead, her pupils blown wide with shock. The car's stale air closed around her again. The hum of the engine and the whisper of wind beyond the window crowded back into her ears. Suddenly she understood. That constant chatter, that manic energy, that clamor, it wasn't who he was. It was an alarm that never shut off after crawling out of hell. It was a bone-deep terror of absolute silence and cold, a frantic, noisy counterpoint to the memory of silent screams and stitched lips. The noise confirmed he was still alive, could still make a sound, could still exist. Loud, wanton, undeniable. Beneath the madness was a soul that had long ago been crushed and wired back together. Vic blinked, dumbfounded by her abrupt recoil and the look on her face. He instinctively licked his suddenly dry lips. Wednesday? You okay? Your hand is freezing." Venom poked its head out from Vic's shoulder. Its huge white eyes, for the first time, were not goofy or hungry. They looked at Wednesday with a strange, concentrated depth. Its voice, low and calm, seemed to speak directly into her head, stripped of the usual mockery. "Did you see? Our birth." For a moment the car filled with a heavy silence. Only the engine's drone remained. Wednesday stared into Vic's eyes and saw, for an instant, beyond their habitual madness, a ruined, endless dark that she'd just brushed against. Her fingers curled without thinking, nails digging into her palm. The bewildered, concerned expression on Vic's face, still there a heartbeat before, evaporated under Venom's words like fog under sun. A new look flickered in him, impossible to pin down, surprise and amusement, braided with a deep, aching nostalgia. "Wow," he breathed, the single syllable more like a sigh. The nasally, high-energy bluster that usually filled his voice was gone. In its place came a low, magnetic calm. Interesting ability. He fixed his gaze on Wednesday's pale face. The corners of his mouth began to twitch up, not into his usual stupid grin, but into a slow, predatory curl, dangerous and oddly compelling. He tilted his head as if playing a game. "Let me guess," he said, amused. "Psychic?" Wednesday didn't answer. Her nearly imperceptible trembling said everything. Vic exhaled a long, contented sound and slid back against the seat. A faint flush colored his cheeks. Not embarrassment, but the warmth of someone steeped again in a memory that thrilled him. For a moment, all the exaggerated clowning dropped away, revealing a startling handsomeness tempered by darkness. "So nostalgic," he murmured, almost a dream. "Those good old days, that battle, I could savor it forever." He touched his lips lightly, as if tasting blood and fear. The noisy idiocy that usually clung to him vanished, replaced by a cold, hungry aura. The unmistakable air of a predator who'd seen the bottom of something awful and come back sharpened. Wednesday's chest stuttered. Her heart leapt in a sudden, fierce rhythm, an odd mix of alarm and attraction, as if she'd been slapped with something both dangerous and beautiful. She studied his profile, new angles under that sinister flush, and felt an unnameable dizziness. It wasn't fear, exactly, nor disgust, more like being pulled toward a cliff edge. Then, as if a switch had been flipped, Vic's eyes popped open, and the predatory glow was gone. The goofy Victor Black returned in a breath. He stretched theatrically, shot Wednesday a gargantuan, ridiculous grin, and the old volume came back full force. "Whoa, so you saw it all, huh?" He slapped his thigh hard enough to make Principal Larissa jump in the driver's seat. "Wasn't it epic? I was awesome." One punch, well okay, lots of punches, but Venom was practically dead weight back then, like a stale piece of dark chocolate. "If it weren't for me." He dove into animated, breathless storytelling, hands slicing through the air, voice climbing its usual decibels as he described the past like some thrilling video game rather than a violent, brutal history. Wednesday watched him wrap himself back in noise and nonsense, the bright, careless light returning to his eyes with practiced speed. Irritation flared in her unexpectedly. Which one was real? The numb, icy boy who stiffened on the operating table and broke free by fusing with the symbiote to reclaim himself with a smile? Or the loud, annoying chatterbox in front of her, whose incessant prattle made her temples throb? She couldn't tell. Worse, she found she wanted to separate the two, to decide which to believe. Venom withdrew back into Vic without another word. The car fell into its odd equilibrium again, Vic's blathering attempting to bury the small, thin, dangerous hint of something else. Wednesday's silence, deeper and more inscrutable than before. Principal Larissa watched them both through the rearview mirror, her silver-gray eyes narrowing, unreadable. No one knew what she thought. The car rolled on. Dr. Kinbot's clinic sat on the edge of Jericho town, a two-story yellow cottage with wilted roses climbing the white picket fence. From the outside, it looked less like a clinic than some suburban living room, trying very hard to hide an emptiness with saccharine sweetness. The air smelled of forced aromatherapy with an undertone of disinfectant that made breathing feel like a small, deliberate act. Principal Larissa shepherded Wednesday and Vic inside like a prison guard bringing in a serious inmate, then stood by the car like a sentinel, her expression daring them to make a move. "Don't even think about running," it seemed to say. The consultation room on the second floor was smothering in a different way. Soft carpets, warm-toned walls, sandbox toys, and an army of small ceramic figures scattered about. Every detail shouted, "Look how safe and cozy we are. Open up." Wednesday felt the room's cloying cheer batter against her Gothic sensibilities like cheap sunshine. Dr. Valerie Kinbot embodied the room. Beige cardigan, practiced smile, eyes working hard to appear accepting. "Please have a seat, Miss Addams, Mr. Black," she said, voice gentle as cotton. "This is just a conversation." She motioned to a pair of overstuffed armchairs. "We can talk about anything. For example, I heard your response to the pool incident was unique." It was the safest opening, meant to lull Wednesday into speaking. Wednesday sat rigid on the edge of the sofa as if it were an electric chair. Her black skirt was an abrupt slash of shadow against the room's pinkish cheer. "Unique?" she said, cool and precise as an ice pick. "Do you mean efficient, or the kind of aesthetic you cannot comprehend? Piranhas are nature's cleaners. I only accelerated the process. Or do you prefer that we let those maggots keep multiplying under the guise of insincere apologies and meaningless suspensions?" Dr. Kinbot's smile wavered, the professional mask cracking. I meant perhaps there were more, socially acceptable ways to handle things." Socially acceptable? Wednesday's glance slid across to a decorative ceramic angel on a nearby shelf. "Like producing more of these hollow ornaments?" The doctor followed her gaze to the angel and sputtered for a second, her composure thinning. She decided, awkwardly, to sidestep the iceberg Wednesday had prodded and turn to the easier thorn, the boy beside her. 10. Good Friday for psychologists. "Mr. Black, what about you? What do you think of Miss Addams's approach?" Dr. Kinbot tried to draw Vic into the conversation to ease the tension. Vic slouched on the sofa, prodding a tiny boxer that Venom had morphed into on his shoulder, making it fight a knitted teddy bear placed next to him. He looked up at the question and flashed an outrageously bright grin. "Wow, I think it's awesome. Those people were like old moldy chocolate, and Wednesday just helped recycle them ahead of schedule. Environmentally friendly." Dr. Kinbot inhaled slowly, pinching her smile into place. A very unique perspective. "So, Mr. Black, perhaps today we could talk about you." "Doctor," Vic suddenly sat up as if he'd discovered a new continent, eyes sparkling as he pointed at the photo frame on the desk. "Is that your boyfriend? Wow, he looks dashing." But he squinted, cocked his head. Dr. Kinbot, surprised, glanced at the picture of herself with a decent-looking man. A faint softness flickered across her face. "Yes, that's... He cheated on you, right?" Vic cut in, as certain as if stating a law of physics. "Probably with your best friend or a colleague. The breakup was ugly. You still sneak looks at his Instagram late at night and mutter, 'We used to be such a couple, don't you?'" Dr. Kinbot's smile froze, color drained from her face. How did you... Oh, simple." Vic waved grandly and launched into his analysis like a commentator at a game. "Look at this photo. First, composition." He jabbed a finger at the frame. "There's room for another person between you two. Your body language is distant. Now look at his hand, loosely resting on your waist. His fingertips aren't even applying pressure. Classic perfunctory hug. Second, the details. Vic fired his big guns. Do you remember the occasion this was taken? You don't, right? But I bet it was some holiday or anniversary. You were dressed up, but look at his cuffs, slightly wrinkled, like he pulled the shirt out of the back of the closet in a hurry. The tie doesn't even match your outfit. His mind wasn't in it. The most important point, Vic slapped his thigh. Look at his smile, tooth-showing grin, but the muscles around his eyes aren't moving. Fake smile, forced cheer. I've seen that plenty. People dragged to boring family gatherings or facing a partner they've already lost interest in. He spread his hands as if the conclusion were obvious. So the conclusion, this guy stopped loving you a long time ago and kept the relationship going until he got caught. You keep this photo on your desk like self-punishment, storing failure where you can see it every day. Doctor, is this self-punishment or advanced Stockholm Syndrome? His tone was breezy, but each observation landed like a scalpel. Doctor, Kinbot went rigid. Her face flushed and paled in turns. Her lips trembled. Her attempts at composure dissolved. She opened her mouth to deny it, but her throat tightened and no words came. Tears instantly gathered in her eyes. The proud defenses of a professional psychologist collapsed under a few blunt, brutally accurate remarks from a deranged teenager. I'm not. We didn't, she tried weakly. Vic, clearly enjoying himself, had found his perfect conversational partner. Hey, don't be sad. Dumping that guy was a blessing. Next time you date, look at the shoes first. True judgment starts with footwear. Wednesday watched all of this with calm detachment. Dr. Kinbot was busy trying to salvage a shred of dignity from Vic's merciless analysis, completely absorbed, perfect timing. Wednesday rose. Excuse me, she said, voice as cold as ever. Restroom. Vic, wrapped up in his psycho lecture, lazily waved a hand. Dr. Kinbot, grasping at a lifeline, nodded quickly, as if the Gothic girl would disappear for a moment so she could breathe and gather herself. Wednesday left the consultation room, expressionless, and closed the door quietly behind her. The hallway outside was empty and silent. Her gaze fell on an unassuming small door at the end of the corridor, the restroom, and she slipped inside. The room smelled of disinfectant and dust. A narrow, dust-coated vent window led to the building's external rainwater pipe. The pipe looked rusty but solid. Below, Principal Larissa could be seen leaning against her car. Without hesitation, Wednesday shed her cumbersome black outer skirt, revealing a practical black shirt and trousers. She shoved the skirt into the corner trash bin, leaned out the window, gripped the cold metal pipe, and slid down with the silence of a nocturnal animal. Her descent was deft and quick. Only the leaves' rustle masked the faint friction. Her feet landed lightly in the alley. She glanced up at the consultation room's closed window, imagining Vic and Dr. Kinbot inside. Then she melted into the shadows, her black silhouette swallowed by the alley's gloom. Back in the consultation room, Vic continued enthusiastically dispensing his how to spot a broken relationship tips, Venom shifting into various small props on his shoulder to illustrate. Dr. Kinbot looked pale, eyes unfocused, as if her spirit had been pinched out. No one noticed that the other troublemaker had slipped away. A slow, rising panic crept through her. The precise, cruel dissection had felt like 1,000 tiny needles. Her heart shriveled, her fingertips went numb. She needed to interrupt the bare-naked personal, psychological surgery. Wait, Mr. Black. Her voice was weak as she raised a hand to cut him off. We should perhaps wait for Miss Addams, see if she needs anything. No answer. Only Vic's bright chatter and the rush of her own heartbeat filled the room. A sense of dread settled in. Wednesday's time in the restroom had been long. Dr. Kinbot jumped up and stumbled toward the restroom, hand trembling on the doorknob. Empty. Cold, white tiles, closed windows, a space clean and empty, as if the Gothic girl had never been there. A classic escape scene. Vic whistled from somewhere behind her, suddenly peeking over the doorway with an excited grin. Cool. I knew she couldn't hold out. Even Venom says this place smells like rotten candy and fake smiles. Dr. Kinbot felt the world tilt. A patient had bolted during a session, right under Principal Larissa's watch. She abandoned any pretense of professionalism, practically tripping down the stairs and bursting through the clinic door, shouting to Principal Larissa by the car, Principal, it's bad! Miss Addams, she's gone! Principal Larissa narrowed her eyes, scanned Dr. Kinbot's ashen face, then looked up at the open consultation room window on the second floor. Her expression remained composed, but the atmosphere tightened. "Escaped through the window?" she asked flatly. "Probably." Dr. Kinbot choked out on the verge of tears. I'm sorry. I wasn't watching for a moment." Principal Larissa didn't scold her. She produced her phone and began to make calls. Dr. Kinbot sagged against the doorframe, feeling like today was her professional Waterloo. No, her personal calamity. She needed a drink, maybe a whole bottle. She turned to find Vic, the only other witness, and found the doorway empty. The noisy, black-haired teenager who had just verbally stripped her bare had vanished like smoke. At the consultation room door, she stood alone, with only Principal Larissa speaking softly into her phone in the distance. A breeze stirred a few fallen leaves. Dr. Kinbot felt a cold, sinking sensation from head to toe, a ridiculous, pitiful despair. Today wasn't just a professional disaster. It felt like a reenactment of Good Friday. She was the Jesus nailed to the cross, and the two thieves were standing by, ridiculing her. She slid down the steps and buried her face in trembling hands. This job, she thought bitterly, really can't be done anymore. The Weathervane Cafe smelled of fresh croissants and ground coffee, a warm, sweet air that stood in stark contrast to the desolate street outside. Victor Black hummed an off-key tune as he pushed open the door. The symbiote around his neck, Venom, wriggled lazily, clearly pleased by the bakery scent. Then he saw the scene. Wednesday Addams, a black tornado in motion, was dispatching 3 students dressed like religious fanatics with precise, brutal grace. A spinning kick, her boot heel found the first man's chin with surgical accuracy. Using the momentum, her body rose and her other leg swept the second student's temple. On landing, an elbow drove into the third man's stomach. Thud, 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 thud. The 3 fell like cut stalks. One slid up to Vic's feet, groaning and helpless. "Whoa," Vic whistled, genuinely impressed as he stepped around the body. "Clean and efficient. The force, the angle, the arc, perfect. Venom, doesn't this look like the ballet version of Kill Bill?" Venom emerged from his shoulder, its huge white eyes scanning the sprawled figures. Its tongue licked its fangs with a regretful smack. "Desserts for me? What a pity. They smell like cheap, expired chocolate. Not hungry." Wednesday retracted her leg, smoothed her clothing, and fixed Vic with an icy stare that flicked to the middle-aged man in uniform behind him. Detective Donovan Galpin, face hard. Her brow tightened imperceptibly. "Vic," she said, voice cold as frost, "have you finally committed a crime worthy of a police escort? Or has your noisiness been officially classified as a public safety hazard?" Vic threw his hands up, feigning innocence. "Hey, I just wanted to buy some top-tier chocolate beans worthy of me and realized I didn't bring enough money." So, Wednesday's eyes darted between him and the detective, finally settling on his empty hands. "You chose robbery. Watch your words, Addams." Vic puffed up, trying to salvage his dignity. "Before leaving, I very clearly told the shopkeeper, send the bill to the Nefermore headmistress's office. How is that robbery? At most, it's delayed payment. Credit spending." At that moment, Venom went rigid on Vic's shoulder, sniffing, eyes narrowing. Its attention was fixed on the barista behind Wednesday, who had been trying to make himself small, Tyler Galpin. Venom's nostrils flared as it took in the scent. "Vic," it murmured, voice low with excitement. "Wait, this scent, very interesting, like a hidden flavor chocolate, wrapped in layers. The outside is milk chocolate, but inside, dark and rich. What is it? Let me taste it, just one bite." Before the words finished, a black, viscous tentacle lashed out from Vic's body, swift as lightning, coiling around Tyler's arm. The tip crept up toward his neck. "Get away from my son, you monster." Detective Galpin reacted instantly, drawing his service pistol. The muzzle leveled at Vic. The cafe froze. Other customers gasped. They were used to Nevermore students being strange, but they'd never seen a black tentacled thing like this. Vic immediately raised his hands, grin still cocky. Relax, detective. Just a joke. Venom is a bit overly hospitable, especially toward people who smell delicious." He snapped his fingers. "Venom, back off. Don't scare our hidden flavor chocolate gentleman." Reluctantly, Venom's tentacle loosened its grip. It hovered, longing, then slithered back into Vic's body, leaving behind a single regretful mutter. "What a waste of good food." Vic flashed a grin at the shaken Tyler and the still gun-pointing detective. "No need to be nervous. Venom and I are good guys. How about buying me a hot chocolate? We can chat while we wait for my aunt, the headmistress, to come bail me out." He said it as if to the detective, but loud enough for everyone in the cafe to hear. Wednesday, who had been inching toward the side door, stopped. The thought of the headmistress arriving stabbed at her like an ice pin. Her carefully half-executed escape plan was in danger. She pictured Larissa Weems's old-fashioned car pulling up outside this saccharine shop. She rolled her eyes, quick and unmistakably annoyed, the expression of someone thinking, "Nothing good ever happens when I run into you." She pivoted, abandoning the side door and heading for the kitchen, hoping for another exit. Fate intervened. Ding-a-ling. The cafe door opened. Headmistress Larissa Weems filled the doorway, silver-gray bun immaculate, sharp gaze sweeping the room like a searchlight. She took in the groaning students, the gun-wielding detective, the pale barista, the smiling Vic with his hands up, and Wednesday, frozen mid-stride with a suitcase in hand. Larissa's eyes pinned to Wednesday. The corner of her mouth lifted into a faint but intensely pressing curve. "Miss Addams," she said evenly, authority in every syllable, "it appears your restroom trip extended several blocks." Wednesday lowered her hand from the kitchen curtain, turning to meet Larissa with the same blank expression she'd worn moments before, as if the fleeing student and the composed girl were different people. "Conducting an urban walking survey," she said coldly. "The hygiene standards here are concerning." Her gaze flicked to the three moaning figures on the floor. Larissa didn't press that line immediately. Her attention shifted to Detective Galpin, who slowly lowered his gun, though his eyes remained sharp. "Donovan," she said in a tone that carried their history, "it seems there's been a bit of a commotion." "Larissa," the detective replied stiffly. "Your student, one of them," he shot a glare at Vic, "tried to attack my son with that black thing of his." "It was an enthusiastic physical greeting and a taste appreciation invitation," Vic protested, lowering his sore arms at last. "The detective's comprehension needs work. Aunt Headmistress, you came just in time. Please vouch for my law-abiding citizenship and pay my chocolate bill while you're at it." Larissa ignored Vic's antics. She examined Tyler's arm, the black residue there, then scanned the costumed students on the floor. "I will handle these matters," she told the detective, her tone closing the subject, "including these students who clearly need to relearn school rules and respect for others. I will contact their headmaster." The detective opened his mouth as if to argue, but Larissa's calm, imposing stare shut him down. He pressed his lips together, nodded, holstered his gun, and led his son aside for a quiet conversation. Larissa turned back to Vic and Wednesday. "It seems," she said without emotion, "today's counseling session ended early and expanded its content in a rather unconventional manner." She regarded Vic. "Your credit spending." Then Wednesday. "Your urban walk." She stepped aside, clearing the path to the door, and made a polite yet final gesture. "Both of you, it's time to return to Nevermore. We will be having a more in-depth conversation." Vic sighed dramatically, shoulders drooping. All right, conversation it is. But Aunt Headmistress, can I have a hot chocolate to calm my nerves before the talk? With 3 chocolate brownies, preferably." Wednesday said nothing. She picked up her suitcase and walked past Larissa without expression, ready to leave first. Only the tightness of her grip, knuckles white on the handle, betrayed her inner turmoil. Her escape had once again been declared a failure. 12. Requiem and Gifts Under the Night. Just as Principal Larissa was about to lead the 2 troublesome students out of the cafe, Detective Galpin suddenly remembered something. He frowned and turned back to Vic. "Wait, Mr. Black." His voice took on an official, inspecting tone. "Where were you from around 10 p.m. last night to 2 a.m. this morning, and from 6 to 8 a.m. this morning?" Vic blinked and spread his hands with an innocent look. "In the dorm, esteemed detective. Nevermore Academy, a luxury single room, actually a triple room." He pointed at Wednesday. "My roommate, Wednesday Addams, can vouch for me. I was asleep all night. She knows I didn't leave." He thought a moment longer. "Oh, right. Our other roommate, the adorable wolf girl Enid, can testify too. She can confirm I was debating the feasibility of squid ink noodles with chocolate sauce with them this morning." A male customer who'd been eavesdropping nearby let out a low, astonished whisper. "Co-ed housing?" His face was a jumble of shock, envy, and grudging admiration. Nevermore certainly ran an interesting operation. Other patrons exchanged looks. Galpin's expression darkened. He filtered the chatter away and zeroed in on the important detail. All night in the dorm. He stared at Vic as if weighing the truth of his words, eyes flicking to the symbiote that had once again appeared at Vic's side and nodding toward it. There have been 3 murders nearby recently. Galpin lowered his voice. Grave. The victims were torn apart. Traces at the scene suggest the perpetrator could be a creature like a giant bear or another large predator. His gaze swept pointedly over Venom's menacing form. A predator, Vic said theatrically, covering his mouth and then patting Venom's head. Hear that? He's talking about you. Next time you damage public property, do it quietly so folks don't confuse you with a murderous bear. Venom bared its teeth obligingly, putting on an exaggeratedly fierce expression. Galpin's mouth twitched. He hadn't gotten anything useful. He drew a breath, as if temporarily ruling Vic out as a suspect, or perhaps simply deciding that questioning him further would be a waste of time. He turned toward Wednesday, who had remained silent and aloof, as if the entire scene were background noise to which she paid no mind. Miss Addams, his tone grew complicated, laced with scrutiny and a faint, barely concealed wariness. I know your father, Gomez Addams. He paused. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed like a slab of ice. He's a murderer. With that, he didn't look at anyone else. He turned and left the cafe with the still pale Tyler, leaving behind an uneasy silence and a dozen probing gazes. Principal Larissa's face went dark for a beat, then she quickly restored her composure and shot a stern look at the whispering patrons. Her authority smoothed the atmosphere back to a shallow calm. Vic wiped his grin off his face, and Venom quietly withdrew. He looked at Wednesday. She stood perfectly still, expressionless, as if Galpin's words had been nothing more than wind. Only in her fathomless eyes did a cold, cutting glint flash, fleeting but sharp. The hand gripping her suitcase tightened until her knuckles blanched. Let's go, Principal Larissa said, cutting through the silence. There would be no argument. Wednesday moved first, her black silhouette parting the remaining stairs. Curiosity, speculation, a touch of fear as she strode out of the cafe. On the rooftop of Nevermore Academy that night, a cool breeze whispered. Wednesday Addams sat alone in the shadows, playing her cello. The music she coaxed from the instrument was fierce and relentless. Paint it black. Each stroke of the bow felt like it cleaved the night, letting out something long suppressed. Not far away, Enid Sinclair hugged her knees. Her ears twitched. She leaned toward Vic, who was fiddling with 2 potted plants on the windowsill. This song, she whispered. It sounds like she's trying to hold something in, or tear something open. Is she upset? Vic held a small watering can and tended the 2 welcome plants the dorm supervisor, Miss Thornhill, had sent the night before. One was for Wednesday, a large, unnaturally black dahlia in full bloom. The other was for Vic, a small tomato plant with a few green, unripe fruits. Maybe it's because the escape plan failed, Vic replied softly, glancing at the black dahlia, which fit Wednesday's aesthetic perfectly, then at his own goofy little tomato. The mood felt heavy. He didn't quite know how to fix it, so he watered the plants with the same mechanical care, hoping the small domestic act might lighten the air. A long, wild wolf howl drifted from the forest, an echo that cut the night. Vic's eyes lit up. He'd found a topic. Hey, it's a full moon tonight. Aren't you going to transform? The moment the words left his mouth, he wanted to smack himself. He'd hit a raw nerve. Enid's head dropped. Her short golden hair seemed to lose its shine. Her fingers fidgeted, and for a heartbeat, her nails lengthened and then retracted. You know, my transformation. Her voice went thin and shaky. That's all I've got. I've tried so many times, she confessed quietly. I can't fully shift. I'm scared. If this keeps up, the pack will cast me out. I'll be forced to be a lone wolf, and I'll be alone. Vic's attempt to ease the mood felt mercilessly clumsy inside his head. Venom mocked him without mercy. Vic's face flushed. He scratched at his head and ears for a few breaths before forcing out. No worries. I'll keep you company. You won't be alone. Enid's face snapped up. Her cheeks bloomed with sudden color. She looked away, fingers twisting the hem of her shirt. Who needs your company? She mumbled, barely audible. The moment didn't soothe things. It made them awkward in a new, flustering way. Venom, silently delighted, gave a private round of applause. Mission upgraded to pink-tinged awkwardness. Vic rummaged in a panic, then slapped his thigh. Right, presents! He reached into Venom and hauled out an enormous eye-searing rainbow unicorn plushie, glittering and almost half a person tall, and thrust it into Enid's lap. Here, this is for you, he said, grinning. A friendship token. Totally matches you, right? Enid blinked at the sudden explosion of color. She hugged the ridiculous unicorn, turning an even deeper shade of red, and buried her face in its mane. Thank you, she murmured. Vic then turned toward Wednesday, who had stopped playing. Don't worry, there's one for you too. He pulled out an identical garish unicorn and waved it toward her. Wednesday set her cello down and looked at Vic and the lurid rainbow creature with absolute stillness. Her red lips parted, and she replied with merciless bluntness, If your taste is as tragically impaired as your mind, I suggest you jump off the roof and get a chance at rebirth. Just kidding, trying to lighten the mood. Vic laughed awkwardly and shoved the unicorn back into Venom. That's a lie, Venom snapped angrily through its tendrils. You're the one who wants to sleep with it. You named it Little Rainbow. Vic clamped a hand over Venom's mouth and poked around inside again. This time, he produced an exquisitely detailed miniature guillotine. A wooden frame, a gleaming metal blade, and even a tiny prisoner doll fixed beneath the fall. This, Vic offered like it was treasure, is a replica of the guillotine used to behead Louis XVI. Perfect scale. The blade actually drops. Press the button, and it makes a crunch sound, and a little red fluid squirts out. Wednesday's gaze shifted. She set the cello aside, came over, and took the model from him. She ran her fingers over every detail, checked the blade's edge and the grain of the wood. A crude imitation, she said, but the criticism was softer than before. I stopped playing with such basic models when I was 5. Still, she held it steady, showing no inclination to hand it back. She tucked it carefully into her small bag. It does have collectible value, she added, and then, in a voice so quiet Vic almost missed it. Thank you. Something in the air shifted. The tightness eased a fraction. Watching Enid cuddling the rainbow unicorn, Vic smiling like an idiot as he fussed with his tomato plant, Wednesday felt, surprisingly, that the night seemed a little less smothering. For the first time since arriving at this asylum they called an academy, she wondered if perhaps staying here wouldn't be completely unbearable. 13. A golden opportunity? In the quiet of night, Wednesday suddenly opened her eyes. Velvety darkness wrapped the dormitory. The only sounds were Enid's even, gentle breathing and the occasional faint smack from Vic's side where Venom, sprawled on the pillow, snored and seemed to be chewing in his sleep. But inside her skull, there was no peace. The thought that had been looping in her mind before sleep returned with fresh force. Perhaps staying in this insane asylum of an academy isn't completely unbearable. Tolerate. The very existence of that word in Wednesday Addams's private lexicon felt like blasphemy. Tolerance implied compromise, lowering standards, weakness, and she, Wednesday Addams, did not do weakness. Worse still was the source of the idea. That idiot who screamed with his bare rear in the air, and that little wolf girl who slept hugging a life-size rainbow unicorn. It had only been 2 days. 48 hours. Had the fortress of her will, once as solid as obsidian, already developed a crack? A siren shrieked in her head. Infection. She was being assimilated by a virus labeled mundane academy life and noisy roommates. She sat bolt upright. The cold night air kissed her skin, but could not cool the panic boiling inside. She had to escape before she began thinking things like, rainbows are quite pleasant, or background noise can be comforting, or, God forbid, being tempted by other, more alarming possibilities. The destination of escape had shifted. It was no longer merely away from Nevermore. It was away from the possibility of becoming a carbon copy of her mother, Morticia. Campus celebrity? Fencing team captain? Prom queen? President of the student council? And then, falling in love? 2 images, stark and dangerous, slipped unbidden into her mind. Vic with that goofy grin stretching to his ears, and Vic reclining in a car seat, flushed and low-voiced in a way that, despite how wrong it felt, was inexplicably attractive. Oh, it was barely a sound, a suppressed gasp, fingers clenching the sheet. What am I thinking? This was worse than infection. This was terminal contamination. Vic's brand of shameless mania infecting her, Enid's overeager warmth spreading like a contagion. She hardened herself like the hardest ice. Resolve froze doubt. She needed a plan, an escape plan. But first, she had to get out of the academy. Principal Larissa had made outings strict. In Nevermore's closed boarding environment, no step off campus without permission. Wednesday lay in the dark like a specimen in a coffin while her mind, sharp and cold, assessed every option and its risk. Climb the walls? Staff patrolled them. Secret passages? She lacked the building's intimate knowledge. Disguise? Too likely to be seen through. Frustrating. Morning brought an annoying, perfectly timed turning point. Enid burst into the dorm like a golden cannonball, face shining with ridiculous enthusiasm, nearly pouncing onto Vic's bed. She braked when she saw him still wrapped in a blanket, only a tuft of black hair visible. Venom sprawled like a black, snoring pancake. "Harvest Festival," Enid crowed. "Next weekend. The principal says everyone must attend. It's west of town, near the forest. There'll be a bonfire, dancing, pumpkin pie," and her eyes glittered, "and the town's best honey caramel apples." Vic rolled out from under the blanket, hair in chaos, eyes frighteningly bright. "Honey caramel apples? Dancing? Sounds like a mass sugar-fueled frenzy. Venom, wake up. New mission. We can—" He glanced at Enid as if her company was a given. Venom wriggled and made a muffled sound. "Apples, coated in chocolate, are the true way." Wednesday sat on the edge of her bed, tying the laces of her immaculate black leather shoes. She did not pause, but she caught every word. Harvest Festival. Off campus. Mandatory attendance. A current of cold electricity raced up her spine. A heaven-sent opening. Outwardly, she was unmoved. Inwardly, a storm. A plan, precise and surgical, formed. First principle: isolate the variables. The two people in the room, Vic, the epicenter of unpredictable noise and trouble, Enid, the comparatively harmless but disastrously enthusiastic little wolf girl, had to be kept out of her plan. They must not detect so much as a hint. The perfect solution: pair them with each other. In a sugar-drenched frenzy, they would occupy and neutralize one another. Second, recruit an ally. Tyler Galpin, the Weather Vane Cafe barista. He had almost agreed to help her get to the station the last time, until Vic's interference ruined the plan. His quiet defiance toward his father and tentative sympathy were exploitable. She needed Tyler at the festival, willing to take the risk again. She sketched the logistics in her head. How to nudge Vic and Enid into a duo naturally. How to arrange for Tyler to be there without alerting faculty. A flyer for part-time help at the cafe came to mind. She could perhaps place an anonymous delivery order specifying Tyler, or, riskier, use the next counseling session. Principal Larissa would likely be on site, slip past her watchful eyes during the peak of revelry. Transportation, Tyler's car first choice, backup needed. Her gaze drifted to the tiny guillotine model on her nightstand. It could be sold to fund travel. At the thought, a tiny, inexplicable resistance bloomed in her chest. Reluctance. The idea was absurd. She almost snorted. She, Wednesday Addams, would not entertain such weakness toward an object. Still, the thought persisted. Maybe the guillotine had other uses, testing a small mechanism, say. She dismissed it. Funding could be solved by other means. "Wednesday?" Enid asked, hopeful and tentative. "You're going to the festival, right? Even if you don't like it, you could just take a look, maybe." "I will go." Wednesday stood, tying the final knot with steady, emotionless tone. "The principal's requirement will not be violated." She picked up her bag and walked to the door. She did not stop at Enid, but left a carefully calculated remark, eyes skimming Vic as if by chance. "You two should go together. It seems you are both brimming with anticipation for this sugar-driven collective frenzy. Perfect. Vic needs someone to watch him so vendors don't chase him for stealing food, and Enid." She let the pause hang and fixed Enid with a look. "You look like you could use someone to share your abundant enthusiasm." The effect was instantaneous. Enid's cheeks deepened in color. She glanced at Vic, who was still babbling about chocolate-coating thickness to an unmoved Venom, then dropped her gaze, fingers twisting at her shirt hem. Her usual effervescence vanished, replaced by rare, flustered shyness. I just, she murmured, voice tiny and lacking its usual spark. The door clicked shut behind Wednesday, cutting off Vic's cheerful cry of, "Exactly! We need a chocolate strategy officer," and Enid's small, muddled reply. She walked into the day and the plan, and the world continued oblivious to the quiet, inevitable momentum of her escape. 14. Death Announcement. A faint, cold curl tugged at the corner of Wednesday Addams's mouth. The plan had begun. All the variables had been steered and secured. Everything was under control, except for a tiny, ignorable flicker deep in her chest regarding the fate of the guillotine. For the next few days, Wednesday moved like a precise, merciless machine, carrying out each step of the scheme. She approached Tyler under the pretense of learning modern communication technology, a lie so distasteful even she felt a little sick, and had Enid give her a brief lesson on the Academy's instant messaging system. Flattered, Enid taught with sincere thoroughness. Late one night, while Enid slept and Vic and Venom bickered dreamily over the ownership of a chocolate cake, Wednesday slipped from her bed. She beckoned Thing to the window and with a marker wrote a random string of letters and numbers on his palm, the credentials for the anonymous account she had just created. "Find Tyler Galpin," she said in a low voice, tapping Thing's palm. "Have him add this. Do you understand?" Thing's index and middle fingers curled in acknowledgement before he slipped silently into the night. The next evening, when Wednesday borrowed Enid's computer again, under the clumsy but effective pretext of checking the weather, a friend request from a stranger blinked at the top of the screen. Step 1. Complete. She messaged Tyler briefly and tersely to finalize the time and place for the escape. Tonight, the old well at the northwest corner of the Harvest Festival. Wednesday noticed, with her usual attention to detail, that Principal Larissa had not fully let down her guard. Sure enough, during the morning assembly, the principal pulled Vic and Enid aside and whispered instructions. Wednesday couldn't hear what was said, but she recognized the look they gave her afterward. The principal had tasked them with watching her, predictable and tedious. She smiled inwardly and kept her face blank, not even bothering to provoke them further. When they all reached the noisy, sugar-scented heart of the festival, the monitoring assignment dissolved as quickly as a candy floss cloud. "Vic, look at that giant pumpkin pie. Venom, quick, smell that. Chocolate-covered bacon, our holy grail. Enid, come here. This game looks dumb, but I have to try it." Vic and Enid, with Vic probably grabbing her hand without thinking to avoid getting separated, plunged into the crowd with whoops and squeals, vanishing among people and steam. Wednesday watched them disappear and felt a small, private satisfaction. Exactly as predicted, these two variables would lose themselves in the revelry. Everything was under control. She scanned the square and saw Principal Larissa busy talking to the mayor across the way. The timing was perfect. Wednesday turned to slip toward the old well. Then, out of the corner of her eye, she saw two hands again, Vic gripping Enid's as they dashed toward a sugar painting stall. Enid's face was lit with an open, cloudless smile. She didn't glance back. For a second, the clenching of those two hands drained something from Wednesday, leaving a hollow, unfamiliar ringing in her chest. Absurd. Utterly absurd. She labeled it, silently and efficiently, as brief discomfort from completing an unchallenging objective and shoved it away. Wednesday Addams did not need warm, meaningless attachments. She took a breath, reassembled the chill in her mind, and moved like a shadow through the crowd toward the old well. She reached the agreed meeting place without being seen. Tyler was there, and his car waited in a narrow, even quieter lane. The engine still hummed as if it, too, were ready for flight. "Get in, quick." Tyler's voice was low, his face tight with nerves and a desperate hope. Wednesday pulled the door open, about to slide in. Then three furious faces stormed out from the mouth of the alley, students from the Inquisition trio she'd already bested at the cafe, still nursing fresh bruises and fueled by revenge. "It's her," the leader snarled, jaw still a little off-kilter. "Catch that goth bitch!" Tyler went pale. Oh no, Wednesday made a split-second call, slammed the car door shut, and jumped free. "Run separately. Draw them away." Staying in the car would have made them easy targets and risked Tyler's vehicle being wrecked. Their only chance was the crush of the festival. They split and sprinted into the chaos. The trio were relentless, shoving through the crowd behind curses and threats, creating a rising panic. Wednesday moved like a fish weaving through a stream, black coat a blur. In a sharp turn near a candy stall, she collided with someone, The impact wasn't great, but it was enough to black out the edges of her vision. A sickening, nauseous loss of control seized her. One of those visions had forced its way in. She saw a pitch-black wood, moonlight slashed by knotted branches. Rowan stood frozen, eyes wide with terror, mouth open but without a sound. Then a colossal creature blurred from the trees, claws like a reaper's scythe ripping through his chest. Blood and organs fountained in a grotesque, vivid spray beneath the cold moon, bones fractured with a wet, crunching crack. The image ended as suddenly as it had begun. Wednesday staggered back, heart racing, cold sweat beading on her forehead. She looked up to find Rowan, dazed by the bump and now blinking with annoyance and confusion. He was alive, intact. The vision had been his death. It had been a warning. Instinct pushed the words out of her. "Rowan, listen, you're in danger." He took a step back, frowning. He turned to leave. "Wait," she snapped, not caring about the three Avengers that might still be hunting her. Something in that premonition compelled her to follow. She had to warn him. She had to try to alter the image. Rowan seemed startled by her urgency. He quickened his pace, pushing through the crowd with a faint use of his ability, heading toward the fringe of the festival and the shadowed trees beyond. Wednesday followed. They left the lights and noise behind and entered the dense dark of the forest. "Stop, Rowan." Wednesday's voice cut through the stillness. "I don't want to hurt you, but you have to listen." He finally halted in a small clearing. The confusion in his face had hardened into something colder, anger threaded with fear and resolution. "What do you want, Addams?" he demanded. "Why are you following me?" "You're being targeted," Wednesday said, crisp and blunt. "I saw your death. It will happen right here very soon." Rowan gave a strange, tight smile. "No, Wednesday, you're wrong. You're the one who's in danger." 15. Top predators in the night. Wednesday frowned. "What do you mean?" Rowan ignored her question and suddenly raised both hands. In an instant, an invisible, immense force clamped around Wednesday's throat and slammed her body against the thick oak behind her. Her back hit the trunk so hard she felt her insides jolt. The telekinetic grip pinned her to the tree, lifting her feet off the ground and squeezing the air from her lungs. A painting floated into view, a girl in black brandishing a sword, standing amid a burning Nevermore Academy. "My mother," Rowan said, his voice trembling. "She was one of the most powerful seers in Nevermore's history. 25 years ago, she painted this. It's a prophecy." His eyes went wild. "In the painting, it's you, Wednesday Addams, sword in hand, Nevermore on fire. You are the embodiment of destruction. You will set everything ablaze." Wednesday blinked, incredulous. "All because of a painting?" Her voice was laced with derision. "You think I'm going to destroy the school because of a 25-year-old picture?" "It's not a doodle," Rowan shrieked. "It's a prophecy. I must stop you. For the Academy, I have to eliminate you before you cause irreparable damage." "Was the falling gargoyle statue you're doing too?" Wednesday asked, fighting for breath and remembering the statue that had fallen in a trajectory that made no sense. If Vic hadn't shoved her out of the way, she might have been killed. She ground the words out between her teeth, spiteful even under the pressure. "Who do you think you are? A savior, or just a madman driven by his mother's visions?" Rowan's face contorted with rage and strain. "Shut up. You know nothing. As long as I stop you, the Academy will be saved. It's worth it." He tightened the telekinetic noose. Black spots danced in Wednesday's vision. The air in her lungs was being crushed out. Death felt uncomfortably close. Then, without warning, Rowan was hurled backward as if by an unseen hand. Wednesday collapsed to the ground, coughing and gasping for air. When she looked up, a massive, hunched figure was emerging. It was the monster from her vision, Hyde. Muscular and twisted, with inhuman limbs and claws smeared with fresh soil and dark red blood, it prowled forward, a low growl rumbling in its throat. Drool dripped from a maw full of jagged teeth, yellow eyes locked on Rowan. The boy tried to push it away with another burst of telekinesis, but the creature moved impossibly fast. It lunged, ripping through Rowan's defenses like paper, seizing him by the shoulder and chest. "No!" Rowan screamed. Wednesday watched, helpless, as Hyde tore him in two. Blood sprayed like a sudden downpour, staining the earth and trees. A few warm drops spattered across Wednesday's face. Entrails and shattered bone littered the ground. The beast gave a satisfied, low roar. It paid her no mind. After its feast, it cast only a cold, uninterested glance at Wednesday, as if she were nothing more than a stone. There was no hunger, no curiosity, only sheer indifference. It turned away, preparing to leave. Then a viscous drop fell onto its blood-soaked back. Another splattered among the entrails at its feet. Hyde's body snapped alert, instincts flaring. Both it and Wednesday looked up at the canopy. Perched on the trunk above them was something darker than night. Venom, fully transformed. Its black mass looked like congealed shadow, powerful sinews rippling beneath skin etched with white spiderweb patterns. A gigantic maw bristling with teeth gaped open. Viscous drool hung like tar. Its enormous white eyes fixed on Hyde with a fierce, hungry light. This was not the teasing presence she knew through Vic's chatter. This was pure predatory force, apex and primal. Wednesday felt the air thicken around it, an oppressive pressure that announced a hunter. Oh. Venom's voice was no longer playful. It was a grinding rumble, like sand and gravel shifting. So fragrant, wild, primordial, full of strength. Its eyes narrowed, and a long tongue rasped over sharp teeth. Then Venom addressed the creature below. "Hey, big guy," it said, voice dripping mock-polite menace. "You smell amazing, like premium chocolate mixed with Kobe beef and adrenaline. Let me have a taste. Just a tiny bite. Promise it'll be quick. Won't hurt much." The words were absurdly courteous. The meaning was murder. Hyde reared up and roared, muscles tensing, claws extended, ready to fight or flee. Wednesday pressed herself against the tree, breath held. She had expected danger, never this. Two monsters about to settle into a showdown, and she was standing smack in the middle of it. Venom dropped from the branch and landed soundlessly, huge form moving with unexpected lightness. It advanced without hurry. "Don't be so stingy," it purred. "Just a little nibble on the head. You look like you regenerate pretty well, right?" Hyde answered with an ear-splitting roar and a vicious slash of a claw. The fight erupted. But it wasn't a battle of equals. Hyde's savage blows struck Venom's dark flesh like strikes against a swamp, force absorbed and dispersed. Claws nicked and slid off without leaving a mark. Venom made no effort to dodge. It watched its struggling prey with amused contempt. Then several black tendrils, stronger than steel, lashed out like constricting pythons. They wound around Hyde's limbs and neck, tightened, and hoisted the creature off the ground, immobilizing it. "If that's all you've got," Venom said, tone drenched in condescension, "seems I don't need your permission after all." Its massive, tooth-filled maw opened wide, poised over Hyde's writhing, trapped head. Drool streamed down. "Well then," Venom rumbled, "let's eat." 16. A deadly dance under the moonlight. Just as Venom was about to take a bite, bang! From far off, a crisp gunshot shattered the forest's silence. Almost at the same time, a shrill, oddly pitched whistle cut through the air and into their eardrums. Several of Venom's tentacles that had been coiling around Hyde snapped cleanly. The severed limbs splattered onto the ground as black goo, then writhed and sucked back into the main mass. "Ugh!" Venom growled, its huge white eyes snapping toward the direction of the sound, fury flaring instantly. "Oh, backup? I wonder if they're as tasty as you." It licked a newly regrown tentacle and resumed its cheerful tone, though an icy kill intent lurked beneath the surface. "What's that whistle for? Calling the puppy home?" Inside the symbiote, Vic felt alarm prickle through him. The whistle's frequency stirred a deeply buried, nauseous memory, something ominous. "Venom, be careful," he shouted in his mind. But it was already too late. The creature that had been so firmly coiling around Hyde reacted as if it had received a command. Its throat convulsed violently, as if something were being forced out from within. Venom's eyes pinched shut. It spat out a small, dark object. "Motherf!" Venom only had time to curse before the device detonated. Flashbang! Boom! A deafening explosion and blinding light erupted inside the confined space. The device's power wasn't a physical blow, but a devastating sensory assault, and loud noise was one of Venom's weaknesses. For Venom and Vic, who depended on hypersensitive senses and a stable symbiotic bond, this was a precise, crippling strike. "Ah!" Venom bellowed in pain and rage. Its massive body writhed and undulated, the black ooze boiling and churning as if trying to separate from Vic. Its form destabilized, its white eyes flickering wildly from interference and agony. In that brief, crucial instant, the hold on Hyde slackened. Hyde tore free from the remaining tentacles, heedless of his wounds, emitting a low, pained growl laced with relief. He spun with shocking speed, crashed through the underbrush, and vanished into the dark forest in an instant. Bastard, don't run! Venom lunged after him, but the sonic and flash interference continued, making cohesion impossible. Its movements became clumsy and chaotic. By the time the device's effects finally faded a few seconds later, the chance to pursue had vanished. Venom deflated like a punctured balloon. Its enormous body rapidly shrank, collapsing back into Vic, like a tide receding. Vic stood there alone, trembling. His legs gave out, and he sank to his knees, hands braced to the earth, his body convulsing as if under unbearable strain. Silence reclaimed the clearing, heavy now with the smell of blood and gunpowder. Only the soft, barely suppressed sobs from Vic broke the stillness. Wednesday watched, frozen, as the breathtaking struggle, so far beyond ordinary comprehension, had exploded into being and then ended almost as abruptly. She looked at Vic's shaking back, hesitated, then walked stiffly toward him. She wasn't used to this, especially not to a man who seemed to be crying. "Are you all right?" Her voice was cool, an attempt at comfort made awkward by its stiffness. She reached out and steadied his shoulder, helping him up. Using her support, Vic turned to face her. Moonlight sifted through the branches and lit his face. Tear tracks glistened on his cheeks, but the expression on his face was not one of sorrow. It was rapturous, twisted with ecstatic delight. A sinister smile stretched almost to his ears. His eyes burned with a hot, near-mad light. An unnatural flush colored his pale skin. Those wet tear trails, paired with that smile, gave him a dangerous, intoxicating air that made some inexplicable part of the mind want to defile. "Oh, Wednesday." Vic's voice trembled with a profound, perverse pleasure. He seized the arm she'd used to support him, his grip a little uncontrolled. She didn't pull away. I knew it, he repeated, his eyes frighteningly bright. Even Venom knows to hide chocolate in different places. How could there be just one nest? His laugh was low and hoarse, unrestrained, pure ecstasy at a discovery. It must be them. Only they would know our weakness. Only they would use this method. He tapped his ears, which still rang faintly, and his smile widened. Wonderful, just wonderful. He almost danced in place, clutching Wednesday's arm. We get to play again. This time I'll find their main nest. I'll dig out all the chocolate and eat it up. His words were delirious and disjointed, but Wednesday understood. The people from the lab, the ones with bird beak masks, had returned, announcing themselves in that way. Vic wasn't crying because of failure. He was crying from exhilaration, the thrill of the enemy reappearing, the start of a new game. He sighed long and satisfied, as if tasting the most exquisite treat. The unnatural flush on his face deepened. His eyes shone with a morbid fanaticism. It's just too wonderful. The thought of this scene gets me so high. Suddenly, he straightened up as if the earlier weakness had never existed. He had the strength to pull Wednesday off balance, and did so. Yet he didn't release her. Using the momentum, he raised her hand high and looped his other arm around her waist. There was no music, only the distant clamor from the harvest festival and the metallic tang of blood in the air. Vic didn't seem to notice. Taking her hand, he began an elegant, deranged waltz right there in the clearing, among the aftermath of the massacre and scattered limbs. His steps were precise and aggressive, leading her through spins and turns. The edges of his black clothes fluttered in the cool night air. In that instant, frivolity and small talk evaporated. The dangerous abyssal aura that poured from him like a potent toxin struck at a corner of Wednesday's heart she hadn't known existed. Her mind went blank. She should have pushed him away. She should have responded with the most scathing of barbs. She should have maintained iron vigilance against his obvious instability. Instead, her body moved with a stiff, almost obedient compliance, following his lead. Her gaze fixated on his face, a mix of madness and consummate pleasure. Tear-streaked, smiling, beautiful in its terrible way. That dark allure, the madness of dancing gracefully beside him, acted like a key, unlocking a door she had kept bolted. Wednesday. Vic's voice dropped, becoming magnetic and husky as he leaned close to her ear. It felt electric, sending a foreign shiver even through Wednesday's resolute spine. The academy, the prophecy, the murders, the monsters, the mastermind. He listed them like an incantation, each word striking a chord in her. All those elements together make for an epic detective novel, don't they? His steps slowed, but his arm stayed around her waist. He gave a slight, lordly bow and extended his hand once more, palm up, eyes alight with a challenging, expectant fire. Miss Wednesday Addams. He said the name clearly. Wednesday flinched. The name, Miss Wednesday Addams, was the title of the detective protagonist buried in the manuscript she had never shown anyone, a cold, razor-sharp female detective modeled on herself. How did he know? Vic's smile deepened as if he saw through the shock on her face. His voice dropped to a conspiratorial whisper. I think, he said, even the brightest Sherlock Holmes needs a Watson who can keep up, and who can surprise him every now and then. Don't you agree? He waited, gaze burning and fixed, not offering a mere partnership among dismembered bodies, but extending an invitation to share whatever came next after this grotesque grand ball. Wednesday looked into his eyes, now fathomless and aflame with the same investigative hunger and dark thrill she recognized in herself. She glanced briefly at Rowan's torn remains on the ground and at the distant lights of the academy. The original plan to escape had been obliterated, but a new game, larger, stranger, and more attuned to her aesthetic, had already begun its bloody curtain call. And she may well have found the most unpredictable and possibly the most interesting partner. Slowly, against her accustomed reserve, the corner of her mouth lifted into a small, utterly genuine curve. She raised her hand and set her fingertips into his waiting palm. You're hired, Watson. Her voice returned to its usual chill, but under that coldness surged an eager current she'd never before admitted. You're going to love Nevermore Academy. Against all expectation, a line her mother Morticia had once said floated absurdly up into her mind, and for the first time she felt a flicker of agreement. Yes, Mother, she thought. I think I'm going to love it here. 17. He disappeared. Vic held Wednesday's hand as they stepped out of the last band of forest shadows and into the warm, glowing halo at the edge of the Harvest Festival square. The roar of the crowd and the saccharine smells hit them, a ridiculous contrast to the silent, bloody stillness behind them. Enid Sinclair was pacing, her short golden hair looking fluffy under the lights. The moment she saw them, she ran over, worry carved on her face. Wednesday! Vic! Are you both okay? Vic said you were in danger earlier. And then he. Her gaze flicked between them, and her words trailed off. She watched Wednesday snatch her hand back from Vic almost reflexively, noticed the stubbornly vivid flush on Vic's face, and Wednesday's slightly faster breathing from the waltz. An odd, inexplicable sense of déjà vu rolled up in her chest, stifling and uncomfortable, but she couldn't name why. Are you okay? She finally asked, confusion and concern plain in her eyes. Vic laughed, clapped an arm around Enid's shoulders, and shepherded her toward the festival as if they'd just been out for a stroll. No problem, he said breezily. It was just that guy Rowan. He's not right in the head. He wanted to kill Wednesday over some old battered prophecy painting. Bad luck for him. He ran into the real thing and he made a tearing motion with his free hand, snapped by some monster that popped out of nowhere. Venom thought the monster smelled pretty tasty and wanted a snack, he added casually. But the other side didn't play fair. They even brought Ace, nearly taking the both of us out. He shrugged like it had been nothing more than an annoying hiccup. Forget all that. The festival isn't over yet. Looks like there's a 4 over there. Vic's rapid-fire summary was too much for Enid to process all at once. She let herself be led along, her attention snagged by the promise of the mysterious attraction. When Vic thrust an ice cream cone drenched in thick chocolate sauce into her hand, she took a greedy bite. The icy sweetness exploded across her tongue and seemed to reboot her brain. She jerked her head up, eyes wide, nearly choking on the cone. Wait, she blurted, voice soaring into a high-pitched squeal. You mean out in the forest right now? There's a corpse? Rowan's corpse? Wednesday stood aside, arms folded, watching with cold amusement before delivering a precise, acidic barb. Astoundingly fast reaction time. It seems sugar can indeed jolt some dormant neurons awake. Enid had no patience for the sarcasm. She grabbed Vic's arm. Her nails lengthened instinctively and pricked the fabric of his jacket. Oh my God, someone died. We need to call the police. No, tell the headmistress first. Are you guys hurt? What about that monster? She babbled, eyes flitting between them, searching for injuries. Relax, relax, Enid, Vic said, patting her back and casually adding another scoop of chocolate to the cone. We ran into Bianca on the way. She'll tell Her Majesty the headmistress. The monster ran off, but don't worry, he grinned, showing pointed canines, a glint of excitement in his eyes. It won't get far. Venom poked a small head out of Vic's collar and stared at the cone with huge white eyes full of longing. Share a bite? Just one? I can hold the cone for you with a tentacle. Enid looked from Vic to the expectant symbiote and felt the panic drain from her. She glanced down at the melting, sinful chocolate in her hand, thought of the cold, mangled body in the forest, and then took another fierce bite. Forget it. Finish the ice cream first. For now, all three of them stood in the square, apparently unharmed, though two of them might be beyond saving psychologically. She sighed, taking comfort in the chocolate melting on her tongue, and shoved the blood and monsters to the back of her mind. As Vic had said, the festival wasn't over yet. She didn't notice the brief, loaded look exchanged between Vic and Wednesday while her face was buried in the cone. It held no ease, only the cold precision and anticipation that come before a hunt. The game had only just begun. Early the next morning, the dorm smelled of pine, mingled oddly with lingering chocolate and a faint metallic tang of blood. Vic was unusually quiet, sitting on the edge of his little throne territory, head bowed and focused. He held a small carving knife and was carefully shaving a block of boxwood. Thin curls of wood fell like fine snow, gradually revealing the sharply scaled outline of an alligator's head. Wednesday sat on her bed but kept glancing at the carving and at Vic's steady hands. It was hard to picture the loud, hyperactive Vic as someone who could be so patient and so precise. What, Rowan's still alive? Vic asked without looking up, his tone flat as if he were discussing wood grain. That's interesting. Last night we danced a very nice waltz on his quartered, still steaming body. He brushed the shavings from the carving. Correct, Wednesday said coolly. The police found nothing in the forest. Then this morning he showed up at the headmistress's office to apply for withdrawal, smiled, waved at me, looked rosier-cheeked than usual, completely normal. She tapped her fingertips against the bed frame. Everyone thinks I've gone mad or that I'm making up a clumsy story to cover a failed escape. Wow. Vic finally looked up. The manic gleam that usually lit his eyes had been replaced by something calm and deep. He tilted his head and smiled. Or maybe we had so much fun last night, we shared a hallucination. Wednesday's look was like an ice blade. Oh, sure, you really have no sense of humor, Vic said with a shrug and bent his head over the wood again. The knife tip precisely carved the alligator's cold pupil. Setting aside the low probability event of collective mental breakdown, he continued in a measured voice that matched his deft strokes. We're left with two possibilities. 1. The one torn apart in the woods last night, the one who tried to kill you, was a fake Rowan. The one we saw this morning is the real thing. 2. Rowan really did die last night, definitely dead, and the Rowan smiling and waving at the headmistress this morning is the fake. He paused, then added, Our academy has plenty of 6. Perfect imitation isn't difficult. By the way, my 10 headmistress aunt, Larissa Weems, is a leading 6. She can even transform clothes perfectly along with herself. He raised his eyes, sharp and probing as he looked at Wednesday. To prevent the scandal of a student dying horribly in the woods outside school, it's likely she'd intervene personally or assign another 6 to impersonate Rowan and bury the whole thing. This Rowan applied to withdraw, right? Perfect. Whether he's dead or not, he'll vanish from our sight. He set the knife down and placed the nearly finished, menacing wooden alligator head beside him, flicked the shavings from his hands, and offered a wry, challenging smile. So, Miss Wednesday Addams, how does this Watsonian deduction hold up? Passable? Chapter 18. A Pine and Chocolate-Flavored Embrace. Wednesday stared at him, her dark pupils roiling with undercurrents. She had to admit that the logic Vic was displaying now was completely different from his usual lunacy. That contrast was more alarming, and somehow more intriguing, than outright madness. The first scenario has a low probability, she said slowly, her voice like shards of ice clinking together. If last night was staged, his psychokinesis is inexplicable, and his intent to kill me was too genuine. Therefore, Vic said, smiling more broadly, we favor the second scenario. The headmistress, or an agent of hers, used Rowan as a cover for a murder that had already happened. A murder they may or may not have known about, but one they absolutely cannot allow to be revealed, Wednesday added, her gaze colder than ever. Vic picked up the crocodile wood carving again, fingertips rubbing the cold wooden scales. It seems our game has acquired another layer of obstruction, he murmured, a dangerous excitement undercutting his words. He noticed the rare, subtle agitation on Wednesday's face, the look of an interrupted clue, and inspected it with the same interest one gives a crack on a prized vase. Seems the detective lady's investigation hit a snag? His voice held a teasing lilt. Usually, in times like this, the loyal Watson doesn't let his Holmes down. He reached into Venom's seemingly endless chest, rummaged, and triumphantly produced an object, a pair of black-framed glasses. One lens was shattered, the temples slightly bent, the frame speckled with long-dried, darkened blood that was easy to miss. Wednesday's eyes widened, a flash of genuine surprise crossing her face. Rowan's glasses, she recognized immediately. Bingo! Vic snapped his fingers. Venom obligingly formed a small applauding hand on his shoulder. A souvenir I picked up last night. Practical, don't you think? More useful than a chocolate-flavored surprise. Wednesday didn't offer a cutting retort this time. She regarded Vic with a hard, inscrutable look that contained, to his delight, a faint thread of appreciation. Well done, Watson, she said flatly, though the weight behind the words made his smile grow wider. She reached out and took the damaged glasses. The cold metal touched her fingertips, and almost at once that familiar, uncomfortable buzzing flooded her head. The dormitory scene tore open and collapsed under the vision. She saw Rowan alone in an empty classroom, arguing fiercely with the air. His eyes were fanatical and fearful as he muttered the same words over and over. Prophecy, destruction, must stop her. The scene shifted. Rowan crouched in the shadow of an academy building, veins bulging at his temples, hands trembling as he strained his telekinesis to pry the base loose from a gargoyle statue, inch by inch. Below it, unaware, walked Wednesday. The vision shifted again to a dim, dust-scented room, the non-public stacks of the library. Rowan slipped through the shelves, drew a heavy, ancient-looking book bound in deep purple from the shelf, and carefully tore out a page. It was the prophetic painting, Wednesday holding a sword before the burning academy. As he closed the book, Wednesday's vision focused on the page before the one he tore free, on the faint shadow of another prophetic image. And most importantly, on the cover, the deep purple binding embossed with a distinctive watermark, an elegant but lethal-looking plant symbol. The vision ended as abruptly as it had come. Wednesday jerked her hand back and took a long, steadying breath. Her face was paler than usual, the psychic shock draining color, but her eyes shone fiercely. Found it, she said in a low voice, part triumph, part icy certainty. The declaration didn't echo in the cold dormitory air so much as press against a warm, scented background, a faint sweetness of chocolate mixed with sharp, fresh pine. The disorientation receded like a tide. Her senses reassembled. She felt a firm hand cradling the back of her head and spine, and the weight of nearly her entire upper body resting against someone's chest. Heat transferred through fabric. She snapped her eyes open to Vic's magnified face, looming over her. His usual manic light had been tempered by concern and a teasing amusement. "Good morning," Vic said, breath ghosting her forehead. "Seriously, next time you decide to have a psychic vision, pick somewhere safe to lie down, or give me a heads up so I can grab a mat. Don't just stand there and fall backward. My poor heart." Only then did Wednesday realize she must have stalled, fainted, or at least staggered backward from the vision and been caught by him. She moved away as if scalded, snapping upright and putting space between them in a motion fast enough to stir the air. She smoothed an already immaculate collar and adjusted her hair with brisk, precise movements, trying to erase any trace of the forced intimacy. "I'll consider it," she said, voice cool and unruffled, as if she'd merely leaned against a pillar. Under that composed mask, her heart was acting traitorously, too fast and too loud. She felt it hammering, filling her ears. For a moment she paused. Was it arrhythmia? A residual effect of the vision? Some occult attack? She dismissed poisoning and physical injury, pressed 2 fingers to her wrist, and measured the pulse. Fast, but regular. Not arrhythmia, just accelerated. Why? Her gaze flicked briefly to Vic's arm, and she turned it away as if the thought itself were ridiculous. It had to be a harmless autonomic response, sympathetic overdrive after psychic exertion. She cataloged it mentally. Note for later, record, observe, consider bradycardic medication if needed. She tossed Rowan's glasses back to Vic, a little sharper than necessary, as if the motion could jostle the memory from her chest. The source of that book, she said, voice stiff, forcing herself back into investigation mode. A purple volume with that plant watermark, kept in a non-public section. That's where Rowan took the prophetic painting. She fixed Vic with a look and let the hunt rekindle the cold flame in her eyes. I know what to do next. She smoothed non-existent wrinkles from her skirt and almost seemed eager to leave the awkward seconds behind. Need help, detective lady? I promise to be as quiet as a piece of chocolate, silent but sweet. No, she refused quickly with a hint of finality. I'll go alone. As if her first answer had been too brusque, she added, more to herself than to him. More people mean a larger target. Solo action adheres better to stealth principles. She opened the dorm door and strode out. The cold corridor air brushed her cheeks but did nothing to lower the heat racing through her. I need to be alone, she told herself. Absolute quiet to analyze and purge this intrusive physiological interference. That embrace, the warmth, the solid hold, the strange yet not unpleasant scent, was a complication she could not afford. She shook her head sharply, as if she could dislodge the memory like dandruff, and walked faster into the corridor. 19. The spectator seats for underachieving students. Vic, clutching the freshly carved wooden crocodile head with its jagged scales, rolled around on his bed, his kingdom, by the bathroom door, flopping about like a large abandoned dog. Oh, I've been abandoned by the heartless detective lady, he droned, burying his face in the crocodile's cold wooden teeth so his voice came out muffled. She won't even take her loyal Watson on an adventure. You sound like a pathetic simp, Venom snapped bluntly, emerging from Vic's shoulder, its enormous white eyes rolling. Want me to put on some sad background music? Something like All the Chocolate Has Left Me? Vic shot upright, holding the crocodile head up and staring into its hollow eyes. No, he said, the faux misery evaporating into excitement. If she doesn't need me, no problem. I can find my own fun. He hopped off the bed with the crocodile head and announced, then I'll just go play with Enid. Oh, for heaven's sake, Venom groaned, covering its face with a tentacle. Your solution is to find a rebound? Now you're a total 12 through and through. And just so you know, if the goth girl or the rainbow little wolf girl or anyone else chops your head off, I'm not saving you. It's called social flexibility, Vic corrected, already bouncing toward the door, crocodile head in hand. Besides, Enid is adorable, like a piece of hyperactive strawberry milk chocolate. Enid, meanwhile, was painting with her 2 friends around their canoe, christened 8. The air smelled of paint and cut grass. Yoko, the colors need to be brighter. Make them fierce. We have to win the Po Cup this time. Enid cheered while daubing bright yellow stripes on her paddle. Hey, are you building Noah's Ark? Is there room for me? A familiar voice laughed. Vic? Enid turned, smiling, until the smile froze into a short shriek. A wide, ferocious wooden crocodile head was shoved right in front of her face. Startled, she jumped back, tripped over a paint can, and flailed as she fell backward. Whoa, careful! Vic reacted instantly. He tossed the crocodile head aside, stepped forward, hooked an arm around Enid's waist, and pulled her back, saving her from a dive into a pile of damp brushes and paint cans. That was close, he grinned, looking down at Enid in his arms. Her cheeks went the exact shade of fresh boat paint, bright red. Her heart hammered from both the scare and the warmth of Vic's arm around her waist. She could even smell a faint mix of pine shavings and chocolate on him. Whoa! Enid's 2 friends made the long, teasing noise they always did, exchanging meaningful looks. Haven't we seen this scene before? Venom, unimpressed by human social patterns, asked, I think I heard Po Cup. What's that? Vic, still holding Enid, seemed to have forgotten to let go. The mention of the Po Cup injected Enid with energy. She sprang up, cheeks flushed with excitement. That's my whole goal this year. Half canoe race, half cross-country trek, and most importantly, no rules. She smoothed her hair, trying to hide her still warm ears under her golden locks. No rules? Vic's eyes lit up like lights. That sounds amazing. Need me to help? He bent to pick up the rogue crocodile head and offered it enthusiastically. Really? That would be so great. Enid's eyes sparkled, not noticing the knowing exchange between her friends. Hey, the pizza's almost here, one of the girls said suddenly, linking arms with the other. We'll check at the school gate. You two can handle this. Okay, Enid answered, already thinking about strategies and forgetting all about the pizza. Be careful. Watching their friends walk off, Vic cradled the crocodile head and leaned in conspiratorially. Hey, Enid, brilliant idea. When the moment comes, we take this crocodile head and do this, then that, and then bam! They'll be terrified. His warm breath brushed her ear. Enid drew her neck in, but hearing Vic's outrageous, tempting plan made her laugh, eyes closing into crescents. Oh my God, Vic, you're such a troublemaker, but I love it, she hastily added. I mean, I like the prank idea. From farther away, the two girls glanced back at the pair, whispering over a wooden crocodile head. Maybe we'll come back later, one suggested. Good plan, the other said. Let's find a place for a long afternoon tea. They won't need us for a while. And so Enid and Vic stayed on the grass under the sun, so absorbed in plotting their prank that they almost forgot they had afternoon class. In botany later that day, the classroom smelled of rich soil, humus, and the faint, strange tang of unusual plants. Vic and Enid sat side by side in the last row, the reserved seats for underachievers. From there, they had a perfect view and were a safe distance from the specimens on the lectern, wilted things that were rumored to induce hallucinations or make you grow ferns all over. Their attention, however, was fixed on the duel at the front of the room. Wednesday Addams and Bianca Barclay were like two battleships trading salvos across a sea of botanical knowledge. A Conidium napellus, also known as 4, Wednesday said, her voice cold and precise as a scalpel. It contains the highly toxic 9. Poisoning causes paresthesia, vomiting, cardiac arrhythmia, and ultimately death by respiratory paralysis or ventricular fibrillation. By the way, don't its withered flowers look like a hood fit for the deceased? Bianca answered almost at once, a smirk at the corner of her mouth. Accurate but unimaginative description, Addams. Why not mention its ritual use in Gallic Druid culture? Or its other, more commonly known name, 3. And to correct you, the flower is more often likened to a monk's cowl, not a hood. Did your knowledge of hoods come from personal experience? Wednesday didn't bat an eyelid. At least my sources aren't siren legends that need singing to gain attention. The monk's cowl you mentioned caused a careless gardener in 1581 Italy to writhe in pain for 24 hours before dying, Bianca shot back. His final words were complaints about burning fingertips. That hardly sounds holy, does it? This is getting interesting, Vic murmured, eyes shining. He reached into Venom and produced a box of chocolate-coated popcorn, stuffing a big handful into his mouth and offering the box to Enid. Enid, still absorbed in the exchange at the front, took some popcorn absent-mindedly and chewed, eyes glued to the verbal battle. How do they know everything? She mumbled, half to herself, half in awe. 20. Emergency call-up for the Edgar Allan Poe Cup. Vic munched popcorn, his legs swinging in excitement. He really wanted to be part of the high-stakes, slightly lethal academic debate. He could talk about the time he'd accidentally tasted a certain tropical fungus and, with Venom, spent 12 hours watching hallucinatory multicolored snails crawl across the floor. So when Miss Thornhill held up a small shrub with eerie metallic blue leaves and berries as red as blood, Vic shot his hand up and answered before he was called on. I know. It's the blue blood noblewoman. Its sap tastes like rusted nails and raspberries, with... He never finished. Out of habit, he plucked one of those glossy crimson berries, popped it into his mouth, chewed, and offered one to Enid beside him. Hey, Enid, want to try it? The texture's kind of... Bianca in the front row almost lost her regal composure. Wednesday's lips twitched with that tiny, perfect expression she saved for the predictable idiocy of others. Victor Black! Miss Thornhill's voice snapped like a wire. She was at the back row in 2 strides, her hand slapping the berry out of Vic's fingers as if she'd just disarmed a bomb. Spit it out, now, immediately. It can cause full-body tetanic spasms until your spine snaps. Her face had gone paper white. She looked as if she needed a breath of fresh air right then. Vic, startled, obediently spat the berry pulp into his hand and smacked his lips. No wonder my neck felt a little stiff. Venom writhed in irritation inside him. Blesh, disgusting. Tastes like you chewed an abandoned bicycle. You idiot, Vic. Could you warn me before you eat things next time? Miss Thornhill held her forehead, still trembling. Pointing at Vic, she declared, You! From now on, no answering questions, no touching teaching aids, no tasting anything, including your own fingers. She glanced at the stunned Enid as if assigning a solemn duty. Miss Sinclair, watch him. If he tries to eat anything that isn't normal food again, I authorize you to use any necessary means to stop him, including, but not limited to, knocking him out. Enid snapped upright, military straight. Yes, Miss Thornhill. She reached out and gripped Vic's wrist so tight it looked like she was restraining a toddler with a taste for toxic berries. Vic blinked, looked at his bound wrist, at the shaken teacher on the podium, at the front row faces that mixed disdain with a little gloating, then down at his box of chocolate popcorn. He shrugged, grabbed a handful, and popped it in. Fine. No debating, no botanical tasting. At least he could still watch and snack. Botany class was still interesting, especially the electric stare-off between Wednesday and Bianca. That was worth the price of admission. That night in the dorm, the evening gloom was a sharp counterpoint to the morning's bright sun. Enid, who'd been like a golden sunflower that morning, was now a blade of grass trampled by a storm. She paced, near tears. Oh God, she choked. Why did this have to happen? They just went for pizza. How do you go from pizza to the infirmary after eating so much ice cream? Her two key teammates were on IV drips in the infirmary, victims of acute gastroenteritis and sugar overload. Forget rowing, half the team could barely stand. The Po Cup was in 2 days, and Enid's team had instantly lost 2 crew members. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. Enid, calm down, Vic said softly, and for once, gently reached out to brush her cheek and wipe away tears. I'll gladly board your Noah's Ark, he said with mock solemnity. But we're still short 2. They need 4, Enid sobbed, counting on her fingers. Now it's just me. I think Venom would be very willing to help, Vic said. To prove it, a black, viscous mass peeled away from his body and quickly took the shape of Venom's muscular form. It cracked a neck and emitted a low rumble. Though I'd rather be a spectator and have all the losing teams for dessert, but fine, for little wolf girl. A thin, writhing black thread tethered Venom to Vic, a reminder of their inseparable link. Enid wiped her face and did the math again. Then we're still short 1. Vic's smile faltered. He'd been orbiting Wednesday and Enid these last few days and hadn't exactly expanded his circle. Last-minute recruits weren't exactly lining up. Then the dorm door opened. Wednesday stepped in, carrying the cold scent of the library stacks and the night wind. She immediately noticed the charged atmosphere. 3 pairs of eyes trained on her, Enid's tear-filled blue eyes, Vic's pleading sparkle, and Venom's enormous, expectant white eyes, like 3 spotlights. What do you want? She asked, eyebrow raised, voice dry. A collective stare like that usually meant trouble, and trouble aimed at her. Vic put on his brightest, most helpless smile and stepped forward. Hey, Wednesday, we're having a little human resources crisis. Enid lunged in like she'd spotted a lifeline. My teammates, hospitalized from eating ice cream. The Po Cup is in 2 days. We're short a person. Please, Wednesday. Just sit in the boat. You don't have to do anything. Just be there, really. Venom nodded at her side, mouth splitting into a grin of too many sharp teeth. We could decorate the boat like a moving coffin, very on theme. Wednesday regarded Vic's grin, Enid's pleading, and Venom's suggestion. For a few seconds, her face revealed nothing. Then she spoke slowly, each word deliberate and cold. Give me one reason I shouldn't nail all 3 of you and that ridiculous canoe to the pillar of shame.